Chapter 580. Who didn't want to be invincible? Who didn't want to do what they wanted to do? Now, the opportunity was right in front of him. He didn't know where Muyude found the great heavenly tiger, but his connections were quite deep. As long as he obtained the ancient bloodline of the great heavenly tiger tribe, Jiangchun would have the hope of becoming a god on the godless continent. This meant that as long as the gods of the 9 heavens did not descend, Jiangchun would be invincible on the godless continent. At that time, where could he not go? What enemies could he not kill? The world was so big that Jiangchun had the final say in the 4 seas and 8 wastelands. The population of the great heavenly tiger tribe is small and you are content with the status quo. If this goes on, the great heavenly tiger tribe will be extinct sooner or later. Muyude said seriously. Why don't you cooperate with us? At that time, we will be of the same bloodline. Our glory will be the glory of the great heavenly tiger tribe. Just the 2 of you. The great heavenly tiger squinted. What glory could a young man and a young Taoist create? The great heavenly tiger had seen many of such people, and most of them died young. Since ancient times, there had never been more than 100 geniuses who could rise up. Just like the carp that crossed the river, how many of them could break through the shackles in the end? Brother Tiger, don't be fooled by his young age. In fact, he is Tianqin's supreme being. Muyude said seriously. Cooperating with a supreme being, how can you lose out? Supreme being? The great heavenly tiger was stunned. To him, a supreme being was indeed intimidating. However, the young man in front of him had a high cultivation. So what if he was once a supreme being? At least not now. In his 3rd life, he is Tian Yuan's supreme being. Muyude continued as if the glory belonged to him. He was very proud and said, in his last life, he is Tian Xian's supreme being. This, reincarnated so many times? The great heavenly tiger was shocked. He more or less knew about reincarnation. Most powerful beings could reincarnate once or twice, but it was rare for them to reincarnate thrice. After all, there was a kind of order in the world that prevented the reincarnation of living beings. Only the strongest experts could go beyond that order and reincarnate. However, for a person to be reincarnated 3 times, this Detian tiger definitely did not believe it. He has reincarnated 9 times. When Muyude saw that the big heaven tiger did not believe him, he could not help but mumble about Jiangchen's glorious deeds. Jiangchen's face darkened as he thought to himself, how can you say something like this so casually? However, now that he thought about it, many people already knew about this secret, so it was fine to say it. As the saying goes, a broken jar is broken. There's already a hole in the soles of my shoes, so why would I be afraid of walking in the rain? Reincarnation of 9 lives? The great heavenly tiger's eyes narrowed and his expression became strange. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Jiangchen. After a few breaths of silence, he asked, have you really reincarnated 9 times? I think so. Jiangchen wasn't sure either. After all, he couldn't recall his past memories. He could only roughly guess his background. What was the name of your first life? The big heaven tiger asked. Jiangchen was dumbfounded when he heard that. What was the name of his first life? How would he know? His first life was... At that moment, Muyude moved to the side of the big heaven tiger and said something mysteriously so that Jiangchen wouldn't hear him. However, just as he finished speaking, a black thunderbolt struck down from the clear sky. It struck Muyude until his entire body was smoking and he was convulsing. Even his soul was almost shattered by the thunderbolt. Forbidden trace? The big heaven tiger's heart trembled. He didn't believe it at first, but when he saw the thunderbolt, he believed it. Only when one touched the forbidden trace would such a thunderbolt strike down. Then, was what Muyude said true? What did he say to you? Jiangchen asked curiously. Nothing. The big heaven tiger shook his head. Seeing Muyude's state, he didn't dare to say anything. If he was struck to death, who could he reason with? He said a name and was struck to death. This wasn't appropriate, right? I can give you the bloodline of the big heaven tiger, but... The big heaven tiger frowned and was in a dilemma. This was because the bloodline was unique to the tribe, and it was related to karma. This kind of karma could be big or small, and it couldn't be explained clearly. If the karma exploded and they couldn't stop it, not to mention the tribe of the big heaven tiger, even Jiangchen would be killed. "What's your condition?" Jiangchen said. "All the karma will be borne by the two of you. What do you think?" the big heaven tiger said. Jiangchen hesitated when he heard that. Jiangchen used to be a supreme being and he knew the power of karma. Now, he didn't dare to accept such an illusory karma. However, when Mu Yud heard that, he immediately nodded and said, "Don't worry. I know how to add karma to my body." "What if we can't bear this kind of karma?" Jiangchen asked. "What are you afraid of? If we don't put in any effort, we won't get anything," Mu Yud said. "Think about it. If we get the ancient bloodline and become land deities in the godless continent, who in the world can compete with us? The karma is too strong. No one knows what kind of karma will explode," Jiangchen said. However, Jiangchen had already made up his mind when he had finished speaking. He looked at the big heaven tiger and said, "It's a deal." Then Mu Yud taught the secret skill to Jiangchen. The two of them performed the secret skill at the same time, and connected themselves with the bloodline of the big heaven tiger tribe. "Take it!" At that moment, the big heaven tiger was relieved. At least the big heaven tiger tribe wouldn't be implicated if there was karma in the future. He waved his hand and 2 drops of blood essence that were shining with colorful radiance fell in front of Jiangchen and Mu Yud. Within the blood essence, there seemed to be a great heavenly tiger that was as big as the heavens roaring. It was surrounded by raging flames and yellow earth and red sand. It was the first big heaven tiger in the world and the origin of the bloodline of the big heaven tiger tribe. "You should have done this earlier. I don't need to borrow your child," Mu Yud said angrily. Then, he absorbed the drop of blood essence into his body excitedly. Jiangchen didn't hesitate. Since they had already reached this stage, what was there to worry about? Half a day later, the two of them merged with the big heaven tiger tribe's blood essence, and their bodies emitted a divine light. Especially Jiangchen. There seemed to be a bell in his body that was ringing, and it made a deafening sound. His internal organs were vibrating as if a door had been opened. Majestic essence, qi, and spirit burst out from his internal organs and swept through his limbs and bones. At that moment, above Jiangchen's head, his qi and blood turned into clouds that stretched for more than 1,000 miles. From afar, the sky looked as if it was dyed red with blood. It was extremely shocking. Perfectly merged with the bloodline of the big heaven tiger tribe? The big heaven tiger was shocked. He didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse for the big heaven tiger tribe. Chapter 581. Why do I feel like something is wrong with my body? At that moment, Mu Yud's face turned pale as he scratched his body. What's wrong with you? Jiangchen looked at Mu Yud's body and saw that it was changing. Mu Yud had a human body, but a pair of horns grew out of his head and a pair of wings appeared on his back. Even his face was transforming into that of an ox's head. Mu Yud sensed it and was shocked. He exclaimed, "Karma? Am I turning into a big heaven tiger? What's wrong with that? The big heaven tiger tribe is not weaker than any other tribe," the big heaven tiger said. However, to Mu Yud, who was a human, being converted to another race was undoubtedly a nightmare. Suppress it! At this moment, Mu Yud didn't dare to be careless. He formed an unknown hand seal with his hands and pressed down on the top of his head. Ripples spread out as the palm fell, and runes burned like stars. A halo rose from Mu Yud's body and exuded an obscure aura. Vaguely, one could even hear the chanting of ancient scriptures. Phew! I must have suppressed the karma. Mu Yud sighed and felt that the changes in his body had disappeared. However, Jiangchen had an odd look on his face. Even the great heaven tiger, who was next to him, was holding back his laughter. Look! Look! Jiangchen waved his hand and used the power of heaven and earth to form a mirror. He placed it in front of Mu Yud. Mu Yude was stunned when he saw the mirror. The horns on his head had disappeared, and so did the wings on his back. Everything looked normal. But the most important thing was that his face, along with his entire head, had turned into a bull's head without horns. "My handsome face!" Mu Yude screamed. He could not accept this fact and fainted on the spot. After a few seconds, Mu Yude woke up. When he saw himself in the mirror, his eyes rolled back and he fainted again. After repeating this 5 or 6 times, Mu Yude finally accepted this fact. He touched his bull's face and mumbled, "It's just karma. When I'm powerful enough, I'll change back. Speaking of which, this cow face is quite handsome," Mu Yude said. When the Big Heaven Tiger heard this, he nodded and said, "The Big Heaven Tiger tribe is considered the best among all the tribes in the world." "Of course." Mu Yude nodded in agreement. Jiangchen snickered and patted Mu Yude on the shoulder. "My condolences. By the way, why didn't you unleash your karma?" Mu Yude finally came to his senses as he looked at the completely unharmed Jiangchen with confusion in his heart. Jiangchen was also a little puzzled. Logically speaking, he should also have some unknown karma. But now, he was fine. His appearance hadn't changed, his gender hadn't changed, and his body hadn't suffered any injuries. Not only that, the blood and qi in his body had become even more vigorous. Maybe it's because his own karma is too deep that other karma can no longer affect him, the Big Heaven Tiger guessed. After all, if a person had reincarnated 9 times, the karma of those 9 lives would be added to this life. How strong would the power of karma be? How could the Big Heaven Tiger's karma do anything to Jiangchen? "Return my son to me!" Now that everything was settled, the Big Heaven Tiger stared at Mu Yude with a ferocious look in its eyes. "I'll give it to you. Who cares?" Mu Yude curled his lips. Previously, he refused to let go of his son, but now, he threw him to the Big Heaven Tiger, as if he was throwing trash. "The Big Heaven Tiger has the ancient bloodline and can freely enter and exit any place in the blood path." At that moment, Jiangchen's eyes lit up and he asked, "Then, can you bring others out of the heaven-flowing boundary?" "Of course," the Big Heaven Tiger said. "I can wrap them with my own bloodline and they can enter and exit any place in the blood path. Does that mean that I can do the same?" Jiangchen asked. "Yes." The Big Heaven Tiger nodded. Jiangchen and Mu Yude both had the bloodline of the Big Heaven Tiger tribe, which meant that they had the ancient bloodline. In this way, they would be like the great heavenly tiger and be able to bring others in and out of the blood path freely. "Let's go! Let's go!" Jiangchen was excited. He looked at the Big Heaven Tiger and said, "Since we have the same bloodline, shouldn't you help us? We are considered to be from the same tribe." The Big Heaven Tiger muttered and did not refuse. However, when Jiangchen and Mu Yude heard this, it was extremely harsh. "Who the F***ck is from the same tribe as you? We are just doing this for the ancient bloodline. Who is from the same tribe as you?" Then, the two of them passed through the boundary wall and entered the heaven-flowing boundary. After asking around, Jiangchen found Lu Zhu in the ruins of the Big Heaven territory and told him his idea. When Lu Zhu heard this, he immediately agreed. The Big Heaven territory was destroyed by the 18 families and almost all of them were killed. Even if Jiangchen did not go to the 18 families, Lu Zhu would go alone. However, he had no choice previously as he could not leave the heaven-flowing boundary. Moreover, he could not fight against the 18 families on his own. Now that he heard Jiangchen's idea, how could Lu Zhu not agree? In the end, with Lu Zhu's help, Jiangchen contacted a group of the most powerful people in the heaven-flowing boundary. Among them, there was no lack of powerful people who were at the Heaven's Decay Stage 5. A few of them had been at the Heaven's Decay stage for countless years. If not for the incomplete Tao in the heaven-flowing boundary, they would have been able to pass the divine tribulation and become deities. "Let's go! The target is the 18 families." On this day, Jiangchen, Mu Yude, the Big Heaven Tiger, and his son were followed by more than 30 powerful people at the Heaven's Decay Stage 5. They did not bring any cultivators of other realms. This was because the cultivators of other realms could not interfere in the battle against the 18 families. For the glory of the heaven-flowing boundary. Kill all the traitors. The group of people walked in an orderly manner. Then, with the help of Jiangchen and the rest's bloodline power, they successfully passed through the boundary wall and arrived at the end of the bloody path. Huh! Why are there so many Heaven's Decay Stage 5 auras? Could it be, oh no, people from the heaven-flowing boundary? At this moment, the patriarchs of the 18 families near the end of the bloody path were awakened. They immediately sensed the auras of Jiangchen and the rest. To be precise, they sensed the auras of the 30 Heaven's Decay Stage 5 cultivators that Jiangchen had brought with him. This is a little tricky. Basically, all the Heaven's Decay Stage 5 cultivators from the heaven-flowing boundary are here. Are they going to fight against the 18 families? Why should we be afraid of them? The 18 families have a strong foundation. We are not afraid of them. Chapter 582. In the end, after the upper echelons of the 18 families discussed, they sent out more than 40 Davis Blight powerhouses. It could be said that they had turned out in full force. Only a few people were left to guard the end of the bloody path. The bloody path is about to come to an end, Jiangchen said softly. Standing on a high mountain, his eyes flickered with fighting spirit. He was destined to participate in this battle. Behind him, more than 30 Davis Blight powerhouses stood side by side. Each of them had monstrous fighting spirit, and there was even a fierce light flickering. Are you afraid of death? Jiangchen said softly. Yes. Someone replied without a trace of falsehood. But so what? Everyone will die one day. If I can't become a god, there will be a day when I die. It's just a matter of time. Now I'm burning my remaining strength and exhausting my last bit of lifespan to do something for the flowing heaven realm and return peace to the flowing heaven realm. Fight until the sky falls and the earth rends, kill until the blood rain dusk. Jiangchen looked back with a calm expression, but his eyes flickered with a wisp of fighting spirit. After a few breaths of silence, he slowly opened his mouth and said, This is not for me, but for your flowing heaven realm. Today's battle is bound to be lost, Jiangchen said. As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent. However, the fighting spirit in their eyes had never declined. The fighting spirit in their hearts had never been extinguished. The auras on their bodies were like long rainbows, sweeping through the sky and tearing the void. Bound to be lost? That was natural. The 18 families had deep foundations and even had demigod-level powerhouses holding down the fort. This battle was naturally bound to be lost. But so what? So what if they were bound to lose? They knew that they were bound to lose, but they still had to fight. If they didn't fight, hope would be like a flame in the wind, extinguished sooner or later. If they fought, it would be like a raging fire burning the prairie, burning it clean. However, in the coming spring, the spring grass would grow vigorously with the wind. If they died, they would leave behind endless hope. This was what these supreme powerhouses of the Davis Blight wanted to do. After enduring for several eras, when had they ever joined forces? Which one of the people present wasn't an overlord of the flowing heaven realm? They had their own arrogance and would never join forces. But now, in this life, the only time they joined forces was to fight to the death. But what was there to be afraid of? Why did you choose to be a ghost instead of a human? Today, I will shatter your souls so that you will not enter the cycle of reincarnation and disappear from the world. Half a day later, the 18 families arrived. There were a total of more than 40 Deva 5th Blight powerhouses, and among them, there were even a few peerless powerhouses whose auras could suppress a vast universe. They were full of vigor and confidence. Before he even arrived, his voice was like thunder rolling through the vast clouds, resounding in all directions. Immediately after, when they saw the people from the 18 clans in the sky, their attacks had already landed. Kill! Fearless! No fear! Wu Xing! At this moment, the strongest group of people from the flowing heaven world made their move. They knew they were going to die, but none of them retreated. A great battle broke out. As for Jiangchen, he stood at the forefront, but he didn't rush out. He had been adjusting his condition all this time, wanting to use more of the power of his third life. In front of him, the mist of flowers curled up, the void collapsed, and the laws and order burned like divine flames. This battle had only just begun, and heaven's wail had already appeared. Someone had already fallen. The blood of a Deva fifth blight powerhouse, a drop of it could turn into a sea, and a strand of hair could cut mountains and rivers. The heavens changed color, the earth collapsed, the mountains, rivers, and rivers were all destroyed. In the distance, there were many people watching the battle. There were the descendants of the 18 families, and there were also trial takers like Jiangchen. They were moved, and their eyes flickered with shock. They had never seen such a terrifying battle. Our 18 families are invincible. They all have to die. Vanish into thin air. Ha ha, in front of our 18 families, everything is nothingness. The descendants of the 18 families were extremely arrogant. They only saw the people of the flowing heaven world falling, but they didn't see the people of the 18 families dying in battle. This battle seemed to be as Jiangchen said, the outcome had long been decided. What is that? What a powerful aura! It has the might of a god! Suddenly, the people in the distance cried out in surprise, only to see an aura like a rainbow, straight above the firmament. At the same time, a phantom appeared, holding a halberd, his body covered in blood, as if the flames of war were burning. Heaven Origin Divine King? Someone recognized the identity of this phantom, and cried out in surprise. It's him! At this moment, many people saw the person under the phantom through the secret technique. That person was Jiangchen. I once fought for the flowing heaven world. In this life, I'll fight again, Jiangchen said softly, adjusting his state for a long time. Now, he could use a lot of his third life's power. At this moment, his aura surpassed the Deva fifth blight, enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with a half-god. However, cracks appeared on his physical body, divine soul, and even his soul. Before he made a move, his body broke down first, and his soul collapsed first. This was the result of using too much of his third life's power. Kill! Jiangchen did not care about this. With a long roar, he finally took a step forward. After that step, half of Jiangchen's body exploded, half of his divine soul collapsed, and the light of his soul dimmed greatly. However, with this step, a footprint pierced through the void like a stream of light, sweeping across. Wherever it passed, 8 Deva fifth blight powerhouses from the 18 families shattered on the spot, turning into nothingness. Even their souls turned into ashes. The power of a step killed 8 Deva fifth blight powerhouses. This is too terrifying! Exclamations shook the sky, and the people of the 18 families were terrified. Is he alright? In the distance, Yi Tsang was also watching the battle, and there were many geniuses beside him. If he takes another step, his physical body will probably collapse. Someone frowned. What does this battle have to do with him? Why must he do this? He has his own thoughts, and his own pride. At this moment, a flower-like figure landed on the ground. Her eyes were bright as she stared at Jiangchen. Her 2 snow-white hands were hidden in her sleeves, and they were covered in cold sweat. You are Deva Tianchen's disciple, Hualiani? Someone asked. Hualiani did not speak. She only stared at Jiangchen, and the worry in her heart was undisguised. It doesn't matter if you are Jiangchen, Tianchen, or even Tianyuan. You cannot change the result of today's battle, someone shouted. He raised his hand and killed a powerhouse from the sky flow boundary. Jiangchen did not speak. After staying in place for a while, he took a deep breath. Then, his face flushed red, and as if he had used up all his strength, he took another step. Boom! After this step, Jiangchen's physical body completely exploded. Even though he had a saint body, he could not withstand the backlash. At the same time, his soul completely dimmed, as if it would be extinguished at any time. However, After this step, a streak of heavenly light descended, tearing through the sky. It was as if a true dragon was dancing about, coiling about as it passed. Of the 18 families, 13 people were immediately blasted apart, killed. Only his soul and divine soul are left. His soul has dimmed, and his divine soul has turned into fragments. He can't use that power anymore. He will die. Chapter 583. Everyone could tell that Jiang Chen's current state was seriously too poor. Although he killed quite a few of the 18 families' supreme powerhouses, it did not have any effect on the outcome of this battle. It was all because the 18 families' foundations were too deep. Now, they sent over a dozen Deva 5th Blight supreme powerhouses again. Jiang Chen, you have the ability to open the gate of life? Back then, when you were Heaven Origin Divine King, you were already defeated. Now, you're still going to be defeated. The 18 families' powerhouses mocked. Although they were very wary of Jiang Chen's present strength, it was nothing to them at all. The outcome of this battle was already destined long ago. If I become a land deity one day, the 18 families will be buried in the endless abyss forever. Jiang Chen let out a long howl, soul light flickering, the myriad form heavenly lamp bobbing up and down. The lamp fire was serene, jumping and burning. Following that, Jiang Chen's soul reached out a hand, casually pinching toward the void. Buzz! The next moment, only to see a flame burst forth from the myriad form heavenly lamp, condensing and forming, turning into a sharp sword flickering with divine light. A sword swings across the world, Jiang Chen said softly, while his soul held the sharp sword and swept it over slowly. What? This is… no! At this moment, exclamations shook the heavens. There were even people who turned around and ran, escaping into the void. All because when this sword light of Jiang Chen slashed out, it actually had the true might of a deity. Deva 5th Blight, so what even if they were half-deities? They were ultimately not true gods. In front of true gods, Deva 5th Blight was like grass, half-deities were ants. The true power of a deity! This sword is probably going to flatten a region! Some people exclaimed, some people were terrified, and some people were worried for Jiang Chen. Buzz! At this moment, the sword light's cold light spanned 90,000 miles. Places that it passed through, everything turned into nothingness. The 18 families' supreme powerhouses were not spared, all killed by this sword. Everyone was shocked. They had never seen before the power of a deity. They had never thought that the power of one sword could have such power. Kid! I'll kill you! At this moment, at the end of the bloody road, a terrifying aura erupted, and a long howl was heard. The Patriarch is awake? So strong! Demigod! Among the 18 families, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that one of the surviving ancestors would wake up. Jiang Chen also heard this voice, but the expression on his soul was very calm. He glanced at himself, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Will I die? Boss? Master? Divine King Tian Chen? At this moment, a group of people rushed over, their eyes filled with worry. Hualiani's face was full of tears. Looking at Jiang Chen, whose soul was dimming, her heart was torn apart. Everyone could see that Jiang Chen was about to die. His body had collapsed, his soul had dimmed, and his divine soul was half destroyed. Who could save him? Forget it. Since I've done it, I have no regrets even if I die. Jiang Chen sighed and looked up at the sky. A trace of sadness and bitterness flashed in his eyes. He said softly, How are you in the 9th heaven? I'm afraid I won't be able to come back. Jiang Chen sighed softly. Get out of my way! Suddenly, a hurried voice was heard. Everyone hurriedly made way for Mu Yude to rush in front of Jiang Chen. Then, he made a hand seal with both hands. Many secret hand seals were formed, and a black fog was emitted. A gust of dark energy floated up and turned into a cage, imprisoning Jiang Chen's soul. What are you doing? Do you want to die? Everyone was furious. Jiang Chen was about to die. How could Mu Yude do such a thing? You know nothing! I'm helping him! Mu Yude did not explain further. His hands kept making hand seals, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. Although the people around him did not know what Mu Yude was doing, they did not interfere. That was because they could not save Jiangqin. Now they could only rely on Mu Yude. Even if he wanted to kill Jiangqin, they would accept it. Bastard! I want you dead! It was at this moment that the demigod from the 18 families shouted. His palm pierced through the void and pressed down on Jiangqin. He wanted to suppress him. At that moment, everyone held their breaths. Some of them even had despair in their eyes. Who could resist the power of a demigod? Under this palm, everyone was going to die. Buzz! However, at that moment, a loud sound was heard at the end of the bloody path. Then, the people from the 18 families emitted rays of divine light, and the sound of chains breaking could be heard. Their seals had been undone. When the seals were broken, the people from the 18 families turned into a rain of divine light, and were pulled by an invisible force. In a short time, all the people from the 18 families were teleported out of the bloody path. The palm that was about to hit them did not fall because the demigod was teleported out. The seals of the 18 families were finally broken, someone said with a sigh. So what? Almost 60 heavenly deterioration stage 5 powerhouses died in this battle. Even if they come out, they won't be able to cause any trouble on the godless continent. Now that the 18 families are gone, the path to the end of the bloody path is completely open. Many people were excited and happy. However, when they saw Jiangqin, who only had a wisp of soul left, their hearts sank. Can you do it or not? Hualiani stared at Mu Yude with tears in her eyes. She was almost desperate. How would I know? Mu Yude stared at her. I've never used this secret technique before. Then why are you still trying? Someone shouted angrily. Hearing that, Mu Yude was also angry. He stared at the person and said, How can I not try? If you have a way, why don't you save him? That person was speechless. Half a day later, Mu Yude collapsed and sat on the ground. In his hand there was a black ball of light that emitted a gloomy aura. It was as if this black ball of light was a hell. Jiangqin's soul was imprisoned in this black ball of light. This is the dark soul removal technique. I got it from an ancient tomb. Mu Yude wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said, Let his soul be nurtured in the darkness. Maybe he can be saved. What if he can't be saved? Someone asked. Can't be saved? Mu Yude squinted and said coldly, Why are you asking this nonsense? If he can't be saved, would you be willing to die with him? Stop asking nonsense. What will happen if he comes back to life? Yi Sangyu frowned. Maybe his temperament will change. Mu Yude wasn't sure. He scratched his head and said, After all, we're using the power of darkness to nurture the soul. There will be some influence. How big will the influence be? Yi Sangyu asked. Not big. Mu Yude felt guilty. He coughed and said, The worst-case scenario is that he will turn into a demon. It's not a big deal. It's better than him dying, right? Only turning into a demon? Yi Sangyu stared at Mu Yude. He felt that this bastard Taoist was lying. It's none of your business. Mu Yude was also anxious. After glaring, he put the black ball of light into his soul. Then, he waved his hand and said, You guys go first. The path of blood is clear now. Go back quickly. I'll stay here with him until he's born. Chapter 584. Many people left. After all, it was too chaotic outside. They quickly returned to their own sects to check on the situation. Yi Sangyu left. Wakako and the others were also rejected by Mu Yude. In the end, only Hualiani and Nayland Mayer stayed. Just like that, the three of them came to the end of the bloody path. They stood in front of the transmission formation, holding the black ball of light in their hands, quietly waiting for Jiangqin to come out. Mu Yude didn't say anything after that. He closed his eyes and sat cross-legged with the ball of light in his hands. He seemed to be cultivating. During this time, Hualiani asked Mu Yud about Jiangchen, but he didn't say a word. Time passed by slowly. A month later, Nayland Mayer stood up and said, "The outside world isn't peaceful. Master is like this now. I'm going out." "What are you going to do? Aren't you going to accompany Master?" Hualiani asked. "I'm going to the Nayland family and then to the Qianzuan sect," Nayland Mayer said. "I'll help Master guard his family." In the end, Nayland Mayer left and stepped onto the altar. A few days later, Mu Yud suddenly opened his eyes and looked into the distance. He saw Nian Changa bringing someone here. That person was headless. His aura was weak and his blood essence had dried up. His lifespan had reached a critical point, and he was on the verge of death. "Yumyuba?" Mu Yud exclaimed. He didn't expect Nian Changa to save Yumyuba after not seeing him for a while. "Where's the other one? The one suppressed in the North Abyss?" Mu Yud asked. "He's dead," Nian Changa sighed. No matter how strong a person was, he couldn't withstand the erosion of time. Mu Yud sighed. The one in the North Abyss was so powerful that he suppressed an era of darkness. But who would have thought that he would end up in such a miserable state? "You're not bringing him out." Nian Changa looked at the black ball of light in Mu Yud's hands. She already knew about Jiangchen. "Go out?" Mu Yud said unhappily. "It's so chaotic outside. Do you want me to bring this burden out?" And then the two of them committed suicide in front of their enemies? Nian Changa was stunned. After thinking for a while, she said, "Why don't you go back to the heavenly palace with me?" "Ha!" Mu Yud chuckled and shook his head. "I'm not going. That place is quite scary." "Really?" Nian Changa was confused. Was the heavenly temple scary? Was that really the case? Or was there something between Mu Yud and the heavenly temple? "Then be careful. There are still many trial takers on the bloody path. If you meet someone you can't beat, leave quickly," Nian Changa said. "I'll take him back to the Skirich temple first." After Nian Changa left, Mu Yud took Jiangchen and Hualiani to a secluded place. Time continued to pass. A month later, most of the trial takers on the bloody path had left. The remaining people were either trapped in the flowing heaven world or dead. Right now, the bloody path was very quiet and peaceful. In contrast, the godless continent was very lively. Since the 18 families had appeared, they had taken over the underworld continent with lightning speed and killed tens of millions of people there. In the end, they had unified the underworld continent. At the same time, the dragon vein in the northern wilderness had awakened. The great path had taken shape, and geniuses had appeared in the northern wilderness. It seemed to be recovering. The most shocking thing was the collapse of the South Continent. Overnight, the land of the South Continent had cracked, and the great path had collapsed. A gray fog shrouded the entire South Continent. All the living beings there had died overnight. Even the heavenly decay fifth stage cultivators had died. The South Continent had turned into a forbidden area. No one knew what had happened. Some people guessed that the South Continent might be connected to Hell. Now, Hell was coming to the human world. Now, there are no more major continents. Other than the Underworld Continent, the Barren Continent, and the Central Continent, all the other continents have been destroyed. This is a chaotic world. I heard that a monarch clan has appeared. An extremely powerful genius has appeared in the clan. He was born with the cultivation of a heavenly being. In the world, there were many rumors. There were geniuses who appeared out of nowhere, and there were also experts of the older generation who died. There were even families with thousands of years of inheritance that were destroyed, and there were also small sects that rose overnight. In this era, the Martial Pavilion did not dare to be too presumptuous. All the forces of the Martial Pavilion had shrunk together, and were entrenched on the Martial God Mountain. Without the restraint of the Martial Pavilion, the entire godless continent was in complete chaos. At this time, some people thought of the time when the Martial Pavilion controlled the godless continent. Although it was chaotic at that time and the Martial Pavilion was unreasonable, there was no such war at that time. Some people even thought that if Lin Lang Wentian was still around and returned from the third mountain, would the world be peaceful? White Emperor City and the Naylan family have migrated and joined the Qianzuan sect. Half a month later, an explosive piece of news spread. 2 top sects and families had joined the Qianzuan sect. At this moment, the Qianzuan sect's foundation had become very deep, and they had stepped into the ranks of the top sects in one fell swoop. Many sects that used to be like thunder and intimidating are gone. There used to be a few large states, but now there are only 3 left. Those famous geniuses and famous experts are also changing their positions. Time passed, and everything was changing. The only thing that did not change was that no one on the godless continent could become a god. This was because Jiang Chen's heavenly coronation technique had not been unlocked. That little bastard! When will he unlock the heavenly coronation technique? Damned vile spawn! Even if he's the reincarnation of Tian Chen, he can't be so overboard. Many Heaven's Blight experts cursed. If not for the heavenly coronation technique, they would have been able to pass the divine tribulation long ago. Once they succeeded, they could become gods. But now, they could only wait for Jiang Chen to unlock the heavenly coronation technique. During the chaos of war, it must be dark. In front of the Qianzuan sect's main hall, Emperor Bai stood there and looked at the distant sky, sighing softly. Beside him, Naylan Mayer, who had become the clan leader of the Naylan family, stood quietly. In the darkness, there must be a ray of light. But where is this ray of light? Emperor Bai said softly. Is it the martial pavilion? Lin Lang Wentian? No matter who it is, I will wait for him to return, Naylan Mayer said. When he returns, he can do whatever he wants. I will accompany him. Even if he wants to be the most chaotic black fog in the darkness, I will accompany him. Even if he wants to be the only ray of light in the darkness, I will accompany him. Our entire family, we will do everything, Naylan Mayer said sincerely. However, when Emperor Bai heard this, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He said mockingly, so what? Feng Yu is his eldest disciple after all. When she gets married, she will be his wife. When Naylan Mayer heard this, her face darkened. She glared at Emperor Bai fiercely and left with a sullen face. Chapter 585. Time passed slowly. Jiang Chen's remnant soul was still in the black ball of light. No one knew how he was doing. Mu Yu did nothing. He cultivated in a secluded place and stared at the black ball of light. This continued until a month later. On this day, Hualiani stood up and looked into the distance. She said, It's time for me to leave. You're not going to accompany your man? Mu Yu asked. Yes, but not here, Hualiani said softly. The outside world must be very chaotic now. I want to be like Naylan Mayer and protect some things for my master. But what can you protect? Mu Yu frowned. He wasn't trying to hurt Hualiani. He was telling the truth. Naylan Mayer had the Naylan family behind her. It was a top family force. What did Hualiani have? Other than the Hua family, she had nothing. Of course, she was also very powerful. However, in these troubled times, would one person be able to do it? I'm leaving. In the end, Hualiani spat out these 2 words and left. Before she left, she stared at the black ball of light. Her eyes were filled with longing and worry. Sigh. You're so merciful. Mu Yu smiled bitterly. He touched the black ball of light and muttered, Why hasn't he been born yet? Did I make the wrong hand seal? During this time, Mu Yu did not speak, but he had been thinking about something. It was the dark soul removal technique. He had obtained this technique from an ancient tomb. He had mastered it long ago. But he didn't tell Hualiani and the others that this technique was only half complete. Therefore, Mu Yu didn't speak during this time. He was afraid that he would leak it. Moreover, Jiang Chen's situation was too dangerous. Mu Yu had no choice but to use this half of the dark soul removal technique. By then, Jiang Chen should have been born by now, but why hadn't there been any news from him? Did I make the wrong hand seal? Mu Yu frowned and took out a yellow book. It was the hand seal method of the dark soul removal technique. After reading it carefully a few times, Mu Yu's face suddenly darkened. This was because after he took a closer look, he realized that when he was forming the seal, there was really a seal that was wrong. A wrong hand seal, coupled with the fact that he had already mastered half of the dark soul removal technique. In this way, it could be said that he was even more crippled than crippled, even more wrong than wrong. At that moment, Mu Yu felt extremely guilty. He stared at the ball of light in his hand and prayed that nothing would happen to Jiangqin. This half-dead, half-alive. Mu Yu sighed and looked into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. At the same time, a lot of big things happened in the godless continent during this month. There were two most important things. The first thing that happened was that the 18 families started to make their moves. With the underworld state as their base, they began to expand their forces in all directions. All the sects and clans that refused to submit were all destroyed. In just a month's time, the influence of the 18 families had doubled. Someone said that if no one went to stop the 18 clans, then they would probably really unify the godless continent. Of course, it wasn't that no one wanted to stop it. It was just that there were two demigods in the 18 families. In the godless continent, this kind of powerhouse was considered a cheat-like existence. Even the most powerful Heaven's Blight powerhouse could not fight against a demigod. As a result, many sects and forces wanted to stop the 18 families, but they were powerless. They could only watch as the 18 families grew stronger and stronger. The second thing that happened was that there was a slight fluctuation in the third mountain. The third mountain was a mysterious mountain that had existed for a long time. Since ancient times, there had never been any fluctuations in the third mountain. Not even the wind, the grass rustled, the birds chirped, or the beasts roared. But now, divine light danced in the third mountain from time to time. There was also the sound of ancient scriptures being chanted. There were also strange phenomena that appeared in an instant and dissipated like the blooming of an epiphyllum. Some people guessed that the thing that caused the changes in the third mountain was most likely Lin Lang Wen Tian, who had entered the third mountain. He might not be dead. Furthermore, some kind of transformation had occurred in the third mountain. Especially that divine light, it made people wonder if Lin Lang Wen Tian had become a god in the third mountain. They're here after all. Half a month later, all the major sects and families in the barren state were terrified. This was because in half a month, the 18 families had finally attacked the barren state. During this period of time, many families in the barren state had moved out. There were also sects that sealed their mountain gates and isolated themselves from the world. There were even some families and sects that directly surrendered to the 18 families and became their lackeys. When the 18 families truly entered the barren state, half of the barren state had already belonged to the 18 families before they even made a move. Which sect is the strongest in the barren state now? Which family is the most prosperous? Which lineage is the best? Among the 18 families, a person at the level of a great ancestor asked the people of the barren state's native sects who had surrendered to them. In terms of family, the Ji clan is the strongest. In terms of lineage, those few academies are the strongest. In terms of sect, the reverent sect should be the strongest now. That person replied. Send someone over and ask the Ji clan if they're willing to submit to us, the great ancestor said. Also, ask those academies if they're willing. If they're unwilling, then destroy them. Oh right, that reverent sect you mentioned before, why does it sound a little familiar? The great ancestor said with a frown. The sect master of reverent sect is Jiangqin, this person said. Now, he had heard some things about what happened in the blood path. The moment these words came out, the great ancestor's face immediately darkened, his face filled with killing intent. Back then in the blood path, Jiangqin used the power of the third-generation heaven-origin divine king to kill so many Deva realm powerhouses of the 18 families in 3 steps. This grudge could not be said to be not deep. Killing people from my 18 families then. I'll destroy your entire sect, leaving no one alive, the great ancestor said coldly. Great Ancestor, now that the Nayland family and White Emperor City have joined the Reverend sect, if we attack rashly, I'm afraid we won't get any benefits. This person said with a frown. Everyone on the godless continent knows the strength of White Emperor City. It's very strong. And the Nayland family's foundation is not weaker than White Emperor City at all, it's even above White Emperor City. So what? Can the foundation of my 18 families be weaker than them? The Great Ancestor raised his eyebrows. Moreover, this kind of battle doesn't rely on the number of people, but the number and strength of the top powerhouses. After saying that, the Great Ancestor smiled contemptuously, took a step forward, and said, I reckon that I alone can destroy the entire Reverend sect. You guys wait for me here, I'll go and destroy them. Chapter 586. Although the 18 clans had lost many powerhouses in the bloody path, after coming to the godless continent, their foundation was still able to run amok. In addition, there were 2 demigods among the 18 families, which made them even more unscrupulous and arrogant. At this moment, the Ancestor was flying toward the Qianzuan sect alone with confidence. He was very fast as he tore through the void like a fiery bird, leaving a red trail in the air. In just 30 breaths, the void outside the Qianzuan sect's mountain gate cracked open and the Ancestor appeared there. However, before he could make a move, a white-haired old man appeared in front of him. Although this person had white hair and looked old, his body was very strong. This person was Bai Jiangye. After a long time, Bai Jiangye's hidden injuries had healed and he had been nourished by a large amount of natural treasures from the White Emperor City. In addition, his aptitude and talent were very strong. As a result, his cultivation had skyrocketed and he had reached the Heaven's Decay Stage 5. Humph! At this moment, Bai Jiangye snorted and pressed his palm down without saying anything. It was like a 5-finger mountain, and the void collapsed under his palm. What? The Ancestor was shocked. He didn't expect there to be such an expert in the Qianzuan sect. In his mind, as long as he was here, everyone in the Qianzuan sect would bow down to him. However, who would have thought that he would encounter such a fierce person as soon as he arrived? I am the Ancestor of one of the 18 families. You ants, quickly surrender! The Ancestor shouted angrily and raised his hand to attack. A bunch of traitors! Bai Jiangye said coldly. His palm landed heavily, and ripples spread out from his palm as a piece of ice appeared. The surrounding air was frozen and the void distorted. When the 2 palms collided, an extremely cold force appeared and froze one of the Ancestor's arms. Then, Jiang Qin attacked again. A ray of light flashed from his fingertip and directly pierced the Ancestor's forehead. He died on the spot. Is this all the 18 families can do? Bai Jiangye frowned and a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. He had been hibernating because of his hidden injuries. Now that he had come out with great difficulty, and his cultivation had increased greatly, he encountered such a loser in his first battle. Father, he is an ancestor of the 18 families. Emperor Bai stood in the mountain gate with a strange expression and muttered. Give them some face. Give them face? Humph. Bai Jiangye's face suddenly turned cold and said, I don't know if my grandson-in-law is still alive. Give them face? If I don't have to guard the Qianzuan sect, I'll go to the underworld now. Father. Emperor Bai's Emperor, Emperor's Decay Stage, Emperor Bai's Bai Jiangye, Emperor. Emperor Bai Jiangye, Emperor Bai Jiangye, Emperor. What? Ancestor to the ancestor is dead? Are you for real? To the ancestor? Half a day later, the 18 families received news that one of their ancestors had died in battle and his corpse was lying outside Qianzuan sect's mountain gate. Qianzuan, ancestor to gate, Qianzuan to sect. A few Heaven's Blight experts from the Nayland clan, as well as the previous White Emperor City Lord Bai Jiangye. Someone replied. Oh? How many Heaven's Decay stage powerhouses are there? That person asked. Should be around 10. Just 10? At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly stood up. His eyes flickered as he waved his hand and said to the man beside him, Are the two of us enough? Yes. The man nodded. Then, the two figures flashed and disappeared from the place. The two ancestors are going to take action personally? They are people who are about to transcend the divine tribulation. Ordinary heaven's decay stage cultivators can't compare to them. With the two of them taking action, the Qianzuan sect will be destroyed. However, a day later, news came that the two of them were also killed outside the Qianzuan sect. In a day and a half, the 18 families lost 3 heaven's decay stage powerhouses, which moved the others. One had to know that within the 18 clans, there were very few powerhouses who had reached the 5th blight. Now, 3 of them died at once. This was undoubtedly a heavy loss for the 18 families. Don't care about face. Advance with the army. Either destroy the Qianzuan sect, or make them submit to us. On this day, among the 18 families, a total of 13 Heaven's Decay stage powerhouses were sent out. They tore through the void and crossed over. After half an incense stick of time, the void above the Qianzuan sect collapsed. The 13 of them stood side by side. Their auras were monstrous, as if kings had descended. What will come will eventually come. Bai Jiangye looked at Emperor Bai and said, "You preside over the situation in the mountain gate. I will go and meet them. Since we have joined the Qianzuan sect with the Patriarch, we will live and die together." In the Nalan family, an ancestor said seriously, "What's more, the descendants of a group of traitors want to unify the godless continent. It's simply wishful thinking. The other party has 13 people. We can't lose face." Another ancestor of the Nalan family said. As soon as he finished speaking, the two ancestors looked at each other and smiled. Then, they waved their hands. One of them even looked up to the sky and roared, "Come quickly! The former patriarch of the original Nalan family's subsidiary family is here to report. The previous sect master of the original Nalan family's subsidiary sect is here to request for battle. The original Nalan family's subsidiary inheritance force, Li Yun, is here to help the Qianzuan sect." At this moment, a few long roars came from afar. Then 8 Heaven's Decay stage powerhouses tore through the void and came over. At the same time, a total of 11 Heaven's Decay stage powerhouses appeared in the Qianzuan sect. They took a step forward and stood in front of the 13 people. "In terms of cards, who has my Nalan family lost to?" An ancestor of the Nalan family said with a chuckle. He pointed at the 13 people in front of him and said mockingly, "There are only 13 people. How are we going to divide them later?" As soon as the voice fell, a few more Heaven's Decay stage powerhouses tore through the void and came over. The person in the lead was one of the deans of the top 10 academies. It's not enough to divide. Let's just watch from the side," the dean muttered. "The small Qianzuan sect back then has such a deep foundation now. It's all because of one person that so many powerhouses can gather." Another dean said, "Jiangchen, this little guy, is really good." Buzz. At this moment, a decree appeared in the sky above the Qianzuan sect. A few big words were written on it. "Central State Dynasty's Imperial Lord Li Fengzi, pay respects." "Oh? Central State Dynasty is also coming to help the Qianzuan sect?" A dean was stunned and said, "Could it be because of Jiangchen?" Chapter 587. When one side was in trouble, there would be support from all sides. This sentence was exactly the current situation of Qianzuan sect. However, wasn't there a little too many people? The people from the 18 families were dumbfounded. They didn't expect that the other side would send so many people before the battle even started. Everyone was in the same realm, and they had the advantage of numbers. Now, they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. How could they fight? Unless there was an extremely powerful Davis Decay expert, there was no way to fight this battle. Stay, all of you stay." Bai Jiangye smiled and said casually. After waving his hand, he said, "This old man will go first. 1 each, no one is allowed to snatch. There are too many wolves and too little meat. Where can we get the heads if we don't snatch them?" At this moment, a group of people rushed out, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. They didn't look like powerhouses at all. Their eyes were full of anxiety, fearing that someone would snatch their heads. "Retreat! Inform the family to send more people over." The 13 people's expressions changed drastically. While fleeing, they transmitted their voices. However, in just the time it took for an incense stick to burn, all 13 of them had been killed without exception. "Thank you for your trouble." At this moment, Bai Jiangye held a human head and cupped his hands towards the surrounding people to express his gratitude. Next to him, the old ancestor of the Nayland family had an ugly expression because he didn't get a single head. "This is what we should do. They are all a group of traitors. All heroes will punish them together." The people around responded with a smile, but some people's eyes flickered with a dignified look. It was because the heritage of the 18 families was too deep. They had been nurtured in the bloody path for several generations. The number of David's decay experts in the family was definitely more than these. The most terrifying ones were the 2 demigods. If those 2 were to take action, how many people in the world could compete with them? Yes, there must be. However, could those people take action? For example, if Daoist Tongtian took action, the world would be peaceful. However, for some reason, he would rather watch the world fall into chaos than take action. They can't even take down Chuanzuan sect? A bunch of trash. At this moment, in a palace in the nether continent, 2 white jade coffins were placed. Inside the coffins were the 2 demigods. They had yet to truly come into being and were slowly awakening. Otherwise, with the strength of the 2 of them, it was enough to unify the godless continent. "Great Ancestor, Chuanzuan sect has reinforcements from all sides. We didn't send enough people, so—" An old ancestor bit the bullet and said. He knelt on the ground, his body trembled, and he broke out in cold sweat. "How many sky humans are left in our clan?" one of the demigods asked. "We've lost too many of them. Now, only 36 of the 18 clans remain." As soon as he said this, the 2 demigods fell silent. However, their coffin lids were vibrating. They had been nurtured in the blood path for several eras, nurturing over 100 celestial realm experts. Now, before the real battle had even begun, there were only 36 of them left? Wouldn't this infuriate the 2 demigods? "Ancestors, please calm down. We will definitely unify the godless continent and open the door of darkness," someone hurriedly said, deeply afraid that this coffin would be opened. "Let's go all out and destroy the entire Zun sect first. Let the people of the godless continent know that our 18 families are not to be trifled with. 36 Deva 5th Blight Supreme experts have all been dispatched. Everything." At this moment, under the decree of the 2 demigods, the 18 clans began to recall all the powerhouses. 3 days later, the 36 Deva 5th Blight Supreme experts gathered. They immediately tore through the void and headed straight for the Zun sect. And at the moment these 36 people moved out, the Zun sect had already made the best preparations. In fact, even the Central Continent Imperial Dynasty sent 5 Deva 5th Blight Supreme experts. There were no words in this battle. Both sides directly started fighting after meeting. People far away in other regions saw the barren state's sky change on this day. Heaven's whale phenomenon continued there. There was even a powerhouse who grabbed a mountain ridge and turned it into a sharp sword, splitting open the void. The river flowed in reverse, freezing thousands of miles. Will the barren state be shattered? More than shattered! The Zun sect probably can't avoid it this time. Even White Emperor City and the Nayland family will be destroyed. And the battle situation was also as everyone had guessed. In front of the 36 supreme experts of the 18 clans, the Zun sect had already lost several powerhouses. Among them, Bai Jiangye was seriously injured. One of the 2 ancestors of the Nayland family died, and the other's physical body was shattered. Only a soul escaped back to the mountain gate. The 5 Deva 5th Blight Supreme experts sent by the Central Continent Imperial Dynasty had all fallen. This battle lasted for a long time. Until a day later, only 32 of the 36 people of the 18 clans were left. On the Zun sect's side, there were only 8 left. The others had all died in battle. At this moment, these 32 people stood outside the mountain gate. Their eyes were burning with flames, and their murderous aura crushed the void as if they wanted to shake the universe. I gave you a chance before, but you didn't know how to cherish it. Now, it's impossible for you to surrender and submit. Today, the Zune sect will be destroyed. In the future, the godless continent will be ruled by our 18 clans. These 32 people's auras were extremely strong. There were even people who were proficient in array formations. At this moment, they were breaking the Zune sect's protective array. In the end, we can't hold on anymore? Bai Jiangye sighed. He was seriously injured, lying outside the main hall of the Zune sect. His body was covered in blood. Beside him, the ancestor of the Nalen family who only had a soul left smiled brightly. His laughter was full of bitterness and helplessness. Feng Yu, Nalen mayor, take the young people in the sect and leave. Leave some hope for the Zune sect, for the White Emperor city, and for the Nalen family. Bai Jiangye sighed. Now, looking at the situation, it was only a matter of time before the Zune sect was destroyed. As for the White Emperor city and the Nalen family, they would also be destroyed. Grandpa. Bai Fengyu's face was filled with sorrow. She didn't want to leave. Nalen Mayer, on the other hand, stood there with a trace of determination on her charming face. I want to wait for him to return. Don't be silly. Keep your life and wait for him to come back. The ancestor of the Nalen family sighed. Even if he comes back, he can't change the outcome. Today, our lives have come to an end. Boom! As soon as he finished his words, the Zune sect's defensive array suddenly collapsed. At this moment, everyone's heart tightened. However, the expressions of the 32 people also turned serious, and they were filled with confusion. That was because they were not the ones who opened the defensive array of the Zune sect. Hurry up and run. The evil spirit has appeared. At this moment, a light door appeared. Mu Yuda was covered in blood, his mouth was full of saliva, and his hair was messy. He didn't even look at the others and ran away. Boom! However, before he could get far, a black palm rushed out from behind the door of light and slapped him to the ground. Run! It's not a joke. The evil spirit has appeared. The evil spirit has appeared. Mu Yuda was lying on the ground, coughing up blood as he shouted at Bai Jiangye and the others. However, no one at the scene could figure out what had happened. Where is Jiang Chen? Where is Master? At this moment, Bai Fengyu and the others asked hurriedly. Mu Yuda had returned, but where was Jiang Chen? Could it be that he was dead? Chapter 588. What fiend? Kid, what's going on? Someone asked, especially the people from the 18 families. Their expressions were somewhat ugly. That was because they felt that there seemed to be an extremely powerful being behind the door of light. The aura emitted by that being was extremely powerful. It's not a demon! It's a fiend! Run! Mu Yuda struggled on the ground for a while, then simply burrowed into the ground and used earth escape to escape. He did not want to stay here. After all, he had just escaped death. Roar! At that moment, a voice that sounded like a ferocious ghost's roar came from the door of light. Immediately after, a being shrouded in gray mist stepped out of the door of light. In an instant, a fiendish aura swept out in all directions, and even the sky dimmed. Beside him, the void was distorted, and the radiance of the great Tao was trampled under his feet. Jiangchun? What's going on? At that moment, everyone was dumbfounded, and even more so, they were endlessly shocked. They felt the aura on Jiang Chen's body, which was comparable to a heavenly decay fifth-stage cultivator. However, Jiang Chen's eyes were turbid, and his body was shrouded in a layer of strange gray mist. He kept roaring. A fiend? He became a fiend? Someone exclaimed, his expression ugly, and his eyes filled with fear. Fiends were different from demons. Very few people knew how fiends were formed, but they knew that the power of fiends was far from what ordinary people could match. Once, a fiend had appeared on the godless continent. At that time, nearly 100 heavenly decay 5th stage cultivators had died to suppress it. Now, another fiend had appeared, and it was Jiang Chen who had transformed into it. I've sinned. Isn't it just a wrong hand seal? How could I become a fiend? Mu Yude, who was hiding underground, had an ugly expression and felt guilty. During this period of time, he had been waiting at the end of the bloody path for Jiangqing to be born. Who would have thought that after this guy was born, he would be delirious and shrouded in a fiend aura and turn into a fiend? And his cultivation level had also broken through to the heavenly decay 1st stage in that black ball of light. A great fiend with a cultivation at Deva's blight. Such a creature could practically do whatever he wanted on the godless continent. It was because the baleful energy was obscure and unfathomable, and it was so strong that it had surpassed the 6 paths of reincarnation. Chi! Just as everyone was shocked, a green lamp appeared above Jiang Chen's head. Then, he waved his hand and the green lamp's flame turned into a sword light. Together with the gray fog, it swept across the void. Puff! Puff! With a few muffled sounds, 3 people from the 18 families were killed on the spot. Not even a wisp of dust or a drop of blood fell. Great fiend! You call this a great fiend? This can already be called a fiend god. The people of the 18 clans were terrified. They had never encountered such a great fiend before. And after seeing the power of that sword, the remaining 29 people were even more terrified, and none of them dared to attack. It's just a great fiend. There are so many of us. Why should we be afraid of it? Today, if the Qianzuan sect is not destroyed, how can we report back? After a short hesitation, the remaining 29 people attacked together. Their attacks shook the entire area and rushed toward Jiang Chen. At this moment, Jiang Chen had already lost his consciousness. In his heart, there was only destruction. He was fearless. The lamp above his head was brightly lit. His hands danced in the air as he rushed over. A punch and a palm burst out like a knife light. Little 6 fingers and 6 paths of reincarnation fist fell like a storm. From time to time, there would be a burst of sword light. That was the 1,000 transformations heaven cut. So fierce. Damn, is this a great fiend? Don't care whether he's a great fiend or not. Run! At this moment, Bai Jiangye and the others reacted. The few remaining Heaven's Blight powerhouses took action together. They directly lifted the mountain gate of the Qianzuan sect and fled into the distance. They knew very well that Jiang Qin, who had become a great fiend, did not recognize anyone. If they stayed here, they might be covered by Jiang Chen's attacks. Father, he can't come back? Bai Fengyu asked. Already become a fiend, how can he come back? White Emperor said solemnly. Perhaps this is his fate. In the dark era, the flames of war are everywhere. He turned into a great fiend. Is he going to be the most chaotic wisp of grey fog in this darkness? Nayland Mayer sighed. Then, a trace of determination flashed across her eyes and said, I will always accompany him. Half a day later, Bai Jiangye and the rest stood 10,000 miles away, watching the battle in the distance. As far as the eye could see, Jiang Chen was fighting 29 celestial beings 5th decay experts alone, and he was already heavily injured. He was very strong, especially after becoming a fiend. His combat strength was simply off the charts. However, no matter how strong he was, his cultivation was only Heaven's Blight. Being besieged by the crowd, Jiang Chen managed to kill another 3 people, but his body was badly injured. The 1,000 transformations heaven lamp above his head was also struck into his soul. The soul light and divine soul were also flickering indeterminately. So what if he's a great fiend? How can the great cause of our 18 families be obstructed by a great fiend like you? Die. And just as everyone was preparing to kill Jiang Qin, an incomparably shrill howl sounded. Immediately after, an Azura tore through the void. Looking carefully, this Azura had 3 heads and 6 arms. It wore a broken crown on its head and had a blood rain falling on its body. This is not a 3-headed, 6-armed Azura. This is, the Tao's soul evolved to its ultimate form, 10 Evil's general manager! Bai Jiangye exclaimed. It's Tian Shui! Bai Fingyu's eyes narrowed. There was only one person in this world who had an Azure Dao soul. You think a great fiend and a 10 Evil's general manager can stop us? Kill them! Who cares who they are? This group of people had ferocious expressions. They had already fought to this extent. No matter who came, they would die. However, at this moment, a tribulation cloud appeared in the sky. That was the heavenly tribulation after Jiangchen entered Heaven's Blight. And the instant the tribulation cloud formed, a heavenly moat tribulation cloud appeared. A bolt of lightning directly struck Tian Shui, who had transformed into the 10 Evil's general manager. Leave quickly! Heavenly moat? Heavenly tribulation? This group of people was alarmed. They did not want to be implicated. If they were implicated, it would be equivalent to crossing the tribulation. At that time, they would most likely die under the heavenly tribulation and the heavenly moat. One is crossing the tribulation, the other has transformed into the 10 Evil's general manager and attracted the heavenly moat. Bai Jiangye was alarmed. He broke out in cold sweat for Jiangchen and Bai Shui. These two people would most likely die under the heavenly tribulation and the heavenly moat without the need for the 18 families to act. Purgatory domain! At this moment, Tian Shui let out a long howl. Within 1,000 miles, pillars of fire appeared out of nowhere. After connecting together, they transformed into a domain. 5 people did not manage to escape in time and were trapped here. Damn it! 2 vile creatures! The 5 of them were alarmed and even more furious. They attacked the purgatory domain but were unable to move it at all. In the end, they made up their minds and charged towards Jiangchen and Tian Shui. Boom! Boom! However, before they could reach them, the heavenly tribulation and heavenly retribution's lightning struck and drowned the area within 1,000 miles. Master! Jiangchen? Chapter 589. A Heavenly Tribulation and a Heavenly Retribution. The combination of the two was so terrifying that the earth was trembling. Everyone's heart was in their mouths because the combination of the two was so powerful that the lightning had already spread to a range of 10,000 miles. Moreover, it was still spreading. Bai Jiangye and the others had already dragged the Jianzuan Sect's mountain gate 100,000 miles away. As for the people of the 18 families, they retreated again and again, not daring to touch the sea of lightning. The two of them are related to each other. They are destined to fail this tribulation. This is the first time in thousands of years that I've seen such a thing. A great fiend and a 10 evildoer have encountered each other. The people of the 18 families sneered. In their hearts, Jiangchen and Tian Shui were destined to die. They would not be able to survive this tribulation. However, they were furious in their hearts because in this battle, the 18 clans had lost a few more Deva 5th Blight powerhouses. Even if the 18 families had deep foundations, they would not be able to withstand such losses. Grandfather, can he survive? Bai Fingyu asked with worry in his eyes. Bai Jiangye was silent when he heard this. He was not sure. In fact, in his heart, Jiangchen was most likely finished this time. If it was only one heavenly tribulation, Jiangchen might be able to withstand it. However, he and Tian Shui were facing the heavenly tribulation together. The combination of the heavenly tribulation and heavenly retribution was far more powerful than ordinary heavenly tribulation and heavenly retribution. The most important thing was that great fiends were the most ferocious things in the world. They were not tolerated by the world. Even if Jiangchen survived the heavenly tribulation, he would have to face another heavenly retribution. What should we do? Mu Yude, who was hiding underground, had a grave expression. If Jiangchen was killed by the heavenly tribulation, it would implicate many things. Some things, once touched and implicated, the consequences would be dire. In fact, even the ancient sky was about to collapse. However, Mu Yude had no other choice. He had already tried his best. He had already done his best to revive Jiangchen's remnant soul. Now that he had to think of another way, he was also helpless. Boom! Boom! At that moment, time continued to pass. The people from the 18 families that had been implicated had already been destroyed. Not even their remains remained. Within the Sea of Lightning, only Jiang Chen and Tian Shui were still standing. However, both of them were severely injured. One of them had his head split open, while the other was burning with flames all over his body, as if he was about to be burned to ashes. Taoist Heaven Span isn't going to make a move? Muyid frowned. Considering how much Taoist Heaven Span cared about Jiang Chen, if he was willing to help, what could a trifling heavenly tribulation do to him? In fact, a single glance from Taoist Heaven Span could cause the sky to change colors. However, even after so much time had passed, Taoist Heaven Span was nowhere to be seen. Mu Yud was also confused. He didn't know what Taoist Heaven Span was thinking. Could it be that they had to watch as Jiang Chen was killed by the heavenly tribulation? At this moment, Jiang Chen's entire body was enveloped by lightning. Although his injuries were not light, the turbid aura in his eyes had somewhat dissipated. Baleful aura was a type of yin energy that belonged to the extreme yin, and 10,000 yin energy. As for the lightning from the heavenly tribulation, it was the extreme yang energy. When the two came into contact, the baleful aura in Jiang Chen's body gradually weakened. At the same time, his consciousness was gradually awakening. However, Jiang Chen's physical body was too strong. The extreme yang energy from the heavenly tribulation could not penetrate his soul at all. It was blocked outside by his physical body. Even though his injuries looked serious, they were actually just flesh wounds. Moreover, as Jiang Chen's injuries worsened, the strength of his third life was gradually recovering. His body flickered with divine light, and a divine aura emerged. Lightning fell from the sky, but in the end, it couldn't hurt a single hair on Jiang Chen's body. Where am I? What am I doing? In a daze, Jiang Chen woke up. The moment he woke up, he was a little confused. But soon, this consciousness was drowned out by the baleful aura. Roar! In the next moment, Jiang Chen let out a long roar. His divine aura erupted, causing the heavenly tribulation clouds in the sky to collapse. Even Tian Shui's heavenly tribulation clouds were turned into nothingness. At this moment, the two of them appeared in front of everyone once again. He passed it? So strong! The aura of a god? Everyone was moved. The divine aura that Jiang Chen emitted was simply suffocating. All living beings in the world, as long as they had not become a god, would kneel down when facing such an aura. This was the reverence that mortals had for gods. I'll bring you away. At this moment, Tian Shui looked at Jiang Chen and stretched out her palm. However, Jiang Chen, who had lost consciousness, had an extremely dense baleful aura. He stared at Tian Shui with his turbid eyes. Then, he punched out. The divine aura was like a river bursting through a dam, suppressing Tian Shui. You! Tian Shui was shocked. Facing the divine aura, she could not resist at all. However, before Jiang Chen's punch could land, a snow-white palm tore open the void and suppressed Jiang Chen with a single palm strike. What? Who is the owner of this palm? The strength of a palm suppressed a person with the divine aura? Everyone cried out in alarm, and they were even more terrified. There was such a living being on the godless continent. Shouldn't such a living being ascend to the godly world of the 9 heavens? This is really worrisome. The owner of the palm did not appear. Instead, an ethereal voice with a hint of concern sounded. This was the voice of a woman. Then, under everyone's gazes, the snow-white hand lifted Jiang Chen up. Then, with Tian Shui, they disappeared into the void. They left? They were taken away by someone? Everyone was stunned. Who was the one who took action? Did they want to save Jiang Chen? Or did they want to kill him? The people of the Chuanzuan sect were shocked and worried. The owner of the snow-white palm obviously had an extraordinary cultivation. Was it a blessing or a curse that Jiang Chen had fallen into the hands of that person? Let's retreat. We can't stay here for long. Bai Feng and Yi Qingyu knew that the 18 families would not let this matter rest. They could only hide now. Grandpa, will he come back? By phone, you asked? He will come back. Nayland Mayer replied. Her eyes were resolute as she said, He will definitely come back. Interesting. Even you have come out. At this moment, Muyude, who was hiding underground, had a strange expression on his face. He recognized that snow-white palm at a glance. The owner of that palm was none other than the Water Empress. An ill-fated relationship. Muyude sighed. Then, he was stunned and asked himself, How did I know about this? Muyude did not know about this at all. However, he had mentioned it subconsciously. Then, what was going on with Muyude? Could it be that his memory was incomplete? Now that he saw the Water Empress's hand, he remembered something subconsciously? Chapter 590. Godless Continent. In a small world that no one had entered since ancient times, this place was filled with a layer of mist that was like a celestial mist. The heaven and earth yuan qi was extremely dense. The mountains were lush, the grass was lush, and the mountain streams flowed slowly. It was like a paradise on earth. Jiangchen sat cross-legged on the peak of a mountain. His body was steaming with a gray baleful aura, and there was a burning rune between his eyebrows. Under this rune, the baleful aura in Jiangchen's body was gradually weakening. To be more precise, it was being suppressed. Beside Jiangchen, Tian Shui had returned to her normal state. Her eyes flickered with an unknown light. Beside her, there was a lady shrouded in divine light. Her appearance couldn't be seen clearly, but her slender figure gave people endless room for imagination. Old ancestor, why do you care so much about him? Tian Shui asked. The old ancestor she was referring to was the Empress. For countless eras, there was only one female cultivator who could be crowned with the title of Empress, and it was the person in front of her. She was the celestial race that was famous in the godless continent, and even the 9 firmaments divine world. Once upon a time, the Empress was powerful. Her peak strength could sweep across the world. Even the gods of the 9 firmaments divine world had to bow down and worship her. However, with the vicissitudes of time, the glory of the past was long gone. Although the Empress was revived, she could only hide in this small world. After the glory, what was left was a decline and loneliness that no one could understand. At this moment, the Empress didn't say anything. Her eyes were bright, as though there were stars floating in the depths of her eyes. She looked at Jiangchen. After a long time, she slowly opened her mouth. Her voice was ethereal, but it carried a trace of dominance. When he wakes up, send him out of here, the Empress said. You don't want him to see you? Tian Shui asked. She was puzzled. One had to know that there were many mysterious forces in this world. Some of them were specifically targeting people like the Empress who had been revived. When the Empress made her move earlier, it could be said that she took a huge risk. If those forces knew about the Empress's whereabouts, no matter how strong she was, she would probably die. Now, Jiangchen was saved, and his murderous aura was suppressed. It wouldn't take long for him to wake up. Moreover, the Empress had spent so much effort, yet she still didn't allow Jiangchen to take a single look at her. Why? Children shouldn't meddle in the affairs of adults, the Empress said softly. Just do as I say. When Tian Shui heard that, she couldn't help but nod her head. She didn't have any objections, she was just curious in her heart. When a woman was curious, the questions she asked made people not know whether to laugh or cry. It was even a little ridiculous. Old ancestor, do you like him? Tian Shui asked. The Empress immediately fell silent. Like? Wasn't that obvious? If he didn't like her, why would he take such a huge risk to save Jiangchen? However, to say the word like personally, even the Empress would probably blush in embarrassment for a moment. Ancestor, you've known him for a long time, right? Tian Shui furrowed her brows and looked at the Empress strangely. Following which, she asked weakly, Then, could he be Ancestor's partner? Which means he's our celestial race's foreign ancestor? When she said this, Shenxi, who was enveloping the Empress, couldn't help but tremble. It could be seen that her emotions were fluctuating. After a few breaths, the Empress said angrily, I'm still a virgin. The true ancestor of your lineage isn't me. It's my elder sister who died in the Dark Age. Yellow flower maiden? Tian Shui was stunned and she was dumbfounded. How old was the Empress? And she was still a virgin. Then, was the Empress waiting for Jiangchen? Old ancestor, since you like him, why do you have to be so secretive? Tian Shui blinked her eyes. Ever since Dao Hun advanced to become the head of the 10 sins, this lass's thoughts had changed. She said very seriously, Old ancestor, since he's still weak, why don't you force yourself on him? Needless to say, when she heard Tian Shui's suggestion, the Empress was really tempted. However, she wasn't such a person. She had her own pride. Just like in the past, she wanted Jiangchen to fall in love with her and not force him. If you love him, then love him. There's no need to force him. The Empress sighed. When he returns, he will give me an answer. After speaking, the Empress's figure flashed and disappeared from this place. Tian Shui was stunned on the spot. She really didn't know what her old ancestor was thinking. Just like that, Tian Shui looked at Jiangchen in a daze and frowned. She couldn't understand why her old ancestor would fall in love with such a brat. What was so good about him? Other than causing trouble all day long, what other strengths did he have? And 3 days later, Jiangchen woke up. The baleful aura in his body was suppressed by the rune on his forehead and turned into an obscure mark in between his eyebrows. He regained his consciousness. When he saw Tian Shui in front of him, he couldn't help but be stunned. He asked, Where is this place? What happened to me? You have become a baleful aura, Tian Shui said angrily. If it wasn't for my old ancestor, you would have either been destroyed by heaven's wrath or killed by the experts from the 18 clans. Become a baleful aura? Jiangchen was stunned for a moment. In his mind, he recalled the memories of becoming a baleful aura. After that, Jiangchen's face turned black. He slammed his palm on the ground and roared, Mu Yud! You scammer! Enough, if it wasn't for him, you would have died long ago. Tian Shui curled her lips. My old ancestor told me to send you out of here after you wake up. Your old ancestor? The Empress? Jiangchen blinked his eyes and looked around, but he couldn't see the Empress. Why didn't I see her? At least I can thank her in person, Jiangchen muttered. However, Tian Shui didn't reply. Instead, she grabbed Jiangchen's shoulder and wanted to bring him away from this place. But now, Jiangchen's cultivation had already reached Heaven's Blight, and his strength had increased tremendously. How could Tian Shui grab him so easily? His body shook slightly, and his gaze turned cold. He looked into the distance and said, Is it so difficult to meet her? After he said that, Tian Shui was shocked to discover that Jiangchen's aura had changed. It was as if the Jiangchen in front of her was no longer the Jiangchen from before. Even Jiangchen was puzzled. His heart throbbed as if there was a voice telling him that he must meet the Empress. Lecher! Hooligan! Bastard! Heartless divine king! Wicked! Scram! However, what answered Jiangchen was the Empress's angry voice. As soon as he finished speaking, a dreadful energy broke out and hit Jiangchen. He was knocked out of the small world directly. Jiangchen was completely dumbfounded. What was going on? Lecher? Hooligan? Bastard? All right, I can accept this as well, but what the hell was Heartless Divine King? Miss, are you sure you are talking about me? Chapter 591. Jiangchen was sent flying out of the small world, feeling extremely indignant in his heart. How did he become a Heartless Divine King? Heavenly Essence Divine King, Heavenly Profound Divine King, plus the previous life's Heavenly Stellar Divine King. How was he heartless? Inexplicable. Jiangchen pursed his lips, thinking that the Empress was sealed for too long, and became delirious after coming into being. Crap! Qianzuan's sect? After several breaths, Jiangchen suddenly thought of Qianzuan's sect and hurriedly got up, speeding all the way towards the original Qianzuan sect's address. However, half a day later, Jiang Chen's face fell. Just because this place was actually the central state. A full 100 million miles away from the desolate state. This kind of distance was not something that could be flown over in 1 or 2 days. One needed to borrow the interregion transmission array. Otherwise, even with Jiang Chen's Deva first blight cultivation, he would probably need to fly for 10 days to half a month too. After 10 days to half a month, who knew what Xuanzuan's sect would be like? Just came out of the bloody path not long ago, Jiang Chen was naturally worried about Xuanzuan's sect in his heart, and wanted to go back and take a look right away. Although he had returned to Xuanzuan's sect before, at that time, Jiang Chen became evil spirit and lost consciousness. He could not remember Xuanzuan's sect's situation at all. The only thing he remembered was only one thing, that was the battle with the 18 families' powerhouses. The 18 families are already attacking Xuanzuan's sect, Jiang Chen said in a solemn voice. If he did not go back earlier, what would happen to Xuanzuan's sect? But after several breaths, Jiang Chen's expression became even uglier. Just because he knew that with his present cultivation, even if he went back, what was the use? The 18 families' foundation was so deep, with many Deva 5th blight powerhouses under them. Even if they lost so many powerhouses all of a sudden, the foundation of the 18 families was still a top existence on the godless continent. Go back to do what? Can't help Xuanzuan's sect either. Jiang Chen let out a long sigh, feeling helpless in his heart. He was very clear that the 18 families would not let Xuanzuan's sect off. But with his present strength, he could not help Xuanzuan's sect at all. For a moment, Jiang Chen felt helpless. He felt even more bitter. He had thought that after stepping into the celestial realm, many troubles could be solved. But who would have thought that not only would they usher in a prosperous and chaotic era, but they would also have to face 18 clans. Right now, Deva First Blight cultivation was really not enough to use. Central State Dynasty. Li Fengzi. At this moment, Jiang Chen thought of a person, the current royal lord of the Central Continent Dynasty, Li Fengzi. This guy had a relationship with Jiang Chen back then. Perhaps if he went to find him now, he would be able to get some help. Thinking of this, Jiang Chen got up again and flew towards the Central Plains Imperial Court. 3 days later, outside the city walls of the imperial capital of the Central Continent Empire. This place was the Holy Land of the Central Continent Dynasty, the place where the imperial palace was located. It was forbidden to fly in this place. All cultivators, regardless of their cultivation base, seniority, or status, had to walk to this place. Otherwise, the Central Continent Imperial Dynasty's army wouldn't play around with you. After tidying up, Jiang Chen landed outside the city walls. With a smile on his face, he walked into the city. However, before he could enter the city gates, he was stopped by a guard. Who are you? Where are you from? The long spear in the guard's hand blocked in front of Jiang Chen. The aura of the upper level of the god realm appeared on his body, and his face was fierce. What's going on? Now a guard needs a cultivator of the upper level of the god realm? Jiang Chen was stunned. He didn't know that in these chaotic times, there were frequent wars. Ordinary guards were not needed at all. Sometimes, the people patrolling the streets were even celestial realm cultivators. They had to protect the peace of a place, and sometimes they had to fight with the enemy. Jiang Chen, from the Xuanzuan sect? I'm quite familiar with Li Fengzi. Now that I'm passing by, I'm here to see him, Jiang Chen said truthfully. Presumptuous! How can you say the royal lord's name so casually? The guard glared and pressed the long spear in his hand between Jiang Chen's eyebrows. He said coldly, Get out of here! Jiang Chen blinked his eyes. He wasn't angry at the guard. After all, what the guard said made sense. As the monarch of the Zhongzhou dynasty, he naturally couldn't say his name casually. Is Li Fengzi so majestic now? Jiang Chen muttered. Humph, where did this brat come from? How dare he say that he knows the royal lord? What a joke! He's probably lying. Look at his poor appearance. Maybe he came to the imperial city to hide from the disaster. Around them, many people were lining up to enter the imperial city. Some of them, who were younger than Jiangqin, mocked him, while some of them even pointed at Jiangqin. They said, "Did you see that? He's already so old, but he's still a celestial being. It's really shameful." Jiangqin was confused and didn't know what to say for a moment. One had to know that after Jiangqin was reborn, he was only in his early 20s now. At this age, his cultivation had reached the celestial realm. He was already a monstrous existence. In this godless continent, how many people in the same generation could stand shoulder to shoulder with him? However, when Jiangqin saw the cultivation of those youths, he didn't feel good. Among the three youths, the oldest was only 13 years old, but the highest cultivation had reached the upper level of the immortal realm. The weakest one was also in the middle level of the immortal realm. What kind of world is this? He's not even an adult yet, and he's already in the immortal realm. Jiangqin was a little dizzy. Did the immortal realm cultivators in this era not need money? Nowadays, with the trend of the times, cultivation is easier. As long as you have a little aptitude, you can easily step into the immortal realm. Another person curled his lips and looked at Jiangqin with contempt in his eyes. He said, "A person in his 20s like him has just stepped into the celestial realm. How bad is his aptitude? Now the immortal realm cultivators can only be gatekeepers. The celestial realm cultivators can only patrol the streets. If I throw out a brick, I can smash a bunch of saints." Hearing these words, Jiangqin couldn't help but sigh. In this glorious era, saints were everywhere, immortal realm cultivators were as common as dogs, and celestial realm cultivators were as cheap as cabbages. "Get out of the way! Prince Wang's son is here!" Suddenly, a few angry voices came from afar, and the sound of horse hooves could be heard. Everyone opened up a path, and they saw a domineering young man in brocade clothes riding a horse from afar. His speed was so fast that he didn't avoid anything. He didn't even look at a few cultivators who were knocked over by his spirit horse. "Get out of the way!" At this moment, the young man glared and shouted. At the city gate, Jiangqin was still in a daze, lamenting about this era. Of course, Jiangqin heard the young man's voice, but he ignored it. What kind of joke was this? Although he couldn't defeat the 5 decay of the immortal realm, how could Jiangqin be afraid of such a small fry? What's more, this was Li Feng's territory. What would anyone do to him? Chapter 592. You don't want to move? I think you're courting death. The young man rushed in front of Jiangqin. His spirit colt neighed and was about to step on Jiangqin's body. However, in the next moment, Jiangqin raised his head and glanced at the spirit colt. Then, the spirit colt neighed miserably and jerked violently, causing the young man on its back to fall. It's just a spirit colt. Jiangqin curled his lips. Jiangqin had the aura of 3 great virtues on him. Those were 3 supreme divine beasts. In addition, Jiangqin himself had the aura of the phoenix. As such, how could a mere spirit colt dare to be presumptuous in front of Jiangqin? Now, he had long been scared out of his wits. He lifted his feet and ran away without a trace. "This is the Imperial City. I heard that not only can you not fly in the air, but you can't ride a mount either." Jiangqin looked at the young man and said, "Don't you know the rules?" "Rules?" The young man was furious. He was already upset that he was thrown off his spirit colt. Now, he heard such a joke. Did this poor boy not know that in the Imperial City, his father, the Prince King, was the rule? The Imperial City is the sky. The Prince King is the sky. Nobles and generals are at peace. Whoever sees him will kneel and lick his boots. On the side, someone muttered softly. They were talking about the 5 prince clans of the Central State Imperial City. Among the 5 prince clans, the Prince King was the most powerful. "Prince, please calm down. I'll ask him to scram." The guard looked nervous. Even a God State expert did not dare to be arrogant in front of this young man. However, this guard had good intentions. He had always disliked the prince's behavior. Now, He said that he was chasing Jiangchen away, but in reality, he was protecting him. Once Jiangchen was driven away, this matter would naturally come to an end. If he was not chased away, with the prince's temper, Jiangchen would definitely be in trouble. However, the crown prince glared at him and said, "Do you think this matter will be over after you chase him away? I am the eldest son of a prince, and also the heir. If I don't teach him a lesson today, won't everyone think that my prince's residence is easy to bully?" When he heard this, the guard smiled embarrassedly and didn't dare to say anything else. "I'll give you two choices now. Kneel down and apologize, or cripple your cultivation." The crown prince had an arrogant look on his face. Then, he slowly extended two fingers and said, "The second option is for me to beat you until you kneel down. Then, I will personally destroy your cultivation. Are all the youngsters nowadays so arrogant?" Jiangchen raised his eyebrows. He glanced at the crown prince's cultivation and said contemptuously, "Low-level divine realm. Are you sure you can beat me? If I hit you, would you dare to fight back? Do you know who my father is?" "Prince Wang." The crown prince was very arrogant. As he spoke, he sent a palm strike towards Jiangchen. "Do you think I wouldn't dare to fight back?" Jiangchen said mockingly. "Your father is Prince Wang, and my brother is the emperor." Bang! After saying that, Jiangchen flicked his finger. Not only did he break the crown prince's arm, but he also sent him flying. However, the crown prince was very stubborn and arrogant. He flew into a rage after getting to his feet. He dashed up to Jiangchen and shouted in anger, "Do you know who my father is?" "Prince Wang." "And then?" Jiangchen asked. "My father is Prince Wang." "And then?" Jiangchen asked again. "My father is Prince Wang." The crown prince glared, his voice getting louder and louder. However, just as he finished speaking, Jiangchen raised his palm and placed his 5 fingers on the crown prince's head. He smiled and asked, "And then?" Thud! In the next moment, the crown prince's legs gave way and he knelt in front of Jiangchen. He smiled and said, "Young hero, your cultivation is amazing." Faced with the crown prince's sudden change in attitude, Jiangchen was stunned for a moment. "How dare you? Let go of the crown prince. You have a death wish." However, at that moment, a few youths rushed out from the crowd. They had nothing to do with the crown prince, but they wanted to climb up the Prince Wang. It was a pity that they had run into Jiangchen that day. Bang! Bang! After a few muffled sounds, the youths were slapped to the ground by Jiangchen and fainted on the spot. Seeing this, the crown prince's face turned pale and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. However, he still forced a smile and said, "Young hero, it was all a misunderstanding. I know I was wrong. Why don't you come to my residence, and I'll prepare a banquet to apologize to you." "Oh? Banquet at Hongmen?" Jiangchen thought to himself. How could he not know what the crown prince was thinking? Even the people around them knew what the crown prince was thinking. Anyone with half a brain would not go to the Prince Wang's residence. If they went, they would not be able to come back. "Since the crown prince is so polite, then I won't be polite," Jiangchen said with a smile. This reaction was out of everyone's expectations. "Please," the crown prince hurriedly said and then led Jiangchen into the imperial city. One had to admit that the Zhongzhou dynasty had a deep foundation. The imperial city was bustling and most of the people on the streets were cultivators. Moreover, each of them had a strong cultivation base. There were even a few Heaven's Blight powerhouses patrolling the streets. "The current imperial lord is my brother by blood." On the way, the crown prince seemed to be very enthusiastic. He introduced the imperial city and mentioned his relationship with Li Fingzi. Jiangchen heard this and said with a smile, "Your relationship in the imperial city is really strong." The crown prince smiled and did not say anything. However, he thought to himself, "Strong? I am the sky here. When we enter the Prince Wang's residence later, I can't kill you." After a dozen breaths, under the crown prince's lead, the two of them finally entered the Prince Wang's residence. Just as they entered the Prince Wang's residence, the crown prince's face froze and he shouted, "Men! Take him down for me. Swoosh! Swoosh! Before his voice fell, he saw two Heaven's Blight powerhouses appear. They did not say a word and went straight for Jiang Qin. Aya? Where's the banquet that was agreed upon? Why is it a Hongmen banquet? Jiang Qin seemed to be surprised. Still holding a banquet? After I kill you today, I'll set up a human meat banquet for you and place it on your grave. The Crown Prince said coldly. However, what the Crown Prince did not expect was that before the attacks of the two Heaven's Blight powerhouses landed, they were stopped by a middle-aged man's loud shout. A middle-aged man dressed in yellow robes rushed out of the hall. When he saw Jiang Qin, his heart clenched fiercely. F***ck this. Why is this fiend here? The middle-aged man felt bitter in his heart. He thought to himself, young people nowadays don't even recognize the Jiang Qin who was famous back then. Or could it be that in this flourishing age, geniuses and monsters came out in large numbers, and those monsters of the past had been forgotten by people? I am Wang Xuanzhong. Greetings, Sect Master. At this moment, the middle-aged man had a smile on his face. He came in front of Jiang Qin and bowed with a smile. He even silently wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. And this person was Prince Wang. Chapter 593. Me? Prince, what's going on? Why are you lowering yourself so much? Many people in the surroundings saw this scene. They were shocked and puzzled. Only the two heavenly human tier powerhouses were calm, but their backs were drenched in cold sweat. They did not see Jiang Qin's face clearly when they attacked. Now that they took a closer look, wasn't that the King Jiang Qin who almost started a war between the Martial Pavilion and the major sects? Sect leader, we didn't see you clearly earlier. We've offended you. Please forgive us, sect leader. The two heavenly human tier powerhouses hurriedly apologized. Although their cultivation levels were much higher than Jiang Qin's, they did not dare to do anything in front of Jiang Qin. Doing anything more would be courting death. Father? What are you doing? Do you know that your son has suffered outside? It's all because of this man. The Crown Prince's face turned ugly. He pointed at Jiang Qin and said, This man must die. Kneel down. Wang Xuanzhong's forehead was covered in cold sweat again. He secretly sent a voice transmission and said, Kneel down. Apologize properly. Otherwise even I, your father, won't be able to save you. Perhaps others did not know about the relationship between Li Fengzi and Jiang Qin, but just a while ago, Li Fengzi issued an imperial edict for the sake of the entire sect and sent a heavenly human tier powerhouse to help. This alone was enough to prove the relationship between Li Fengzi and Jiang Qin. Now, Jiang Qin had come to the imperial city of the Zhongzhou dynasty, which was Li Fengzi's territory. Perhaps Li Fengzi already knew that Jiang Qin was here. Or, it would not be long before Li Fengzi personally came to the prince's mansion. At that time, the ruler of a country would only need to say a word to bring disaster to the prince's mansion. Wang Xuanzhong was very worried and broke out in cold sweat. He was worried that Jiang Qin was going to kill his son. After all, his son had always wanted to kill Jiang Qin. Wang Xuanzhong understood this principle very well. Right now, the only one who could save his son was himself. If he apologized properly now, he might still have a chance to live. Otherwise, even if the Heavenly Emperor came, he wouldn't be able to save him. Father, this person is a nobody. Who does he think he is? Is he worth being treated like this by you? The Crown Prince raised his eyebrows. He had been pampered and spoiled since he was young. How would he know that there were some people in the world that he could not afford to offend? How dare you! Kneel down! Wang Xuanzhong was anxious. He stretched out his palm, wanting to force his son to kneel. However, right at that moment, the Crown Prince took out an ancient Huangmang order plate, raised it high, and said, Everyone in the prince's residence, listen to my order. Kill this brat. What? Huangmang order? Isn't this something that only princes can wear? Since ancient times, only the prince has been able to possess it. This kid stole his father's Huang Mang token. At this moment, the hearts of the group of experts, including Wang Xuanzhong, tightened. After all, within the prince's estate, the Huang Mang command token was the heavens. Once the Huang Mang order was issued, no matter who you were, you had to obey the order. This was the rule. The rule passed down from the prince's estate. Wang Xuanzhong was also dumbfounded. He didn't know when his stupid son stole the Huang Mang order. All of you stop. At this moment, Wang Xuanzhong became anxious. He shouted loudly and stopped the experts around him. However, after hesitating for a while, the experts in the prince's estate could only sigh when they saw the Huang Mang order in the crown prince's hand. Then, they ignored Wang Xuanzhong and charged toward Jiang Chen. It's over. It's over. Oh no! This crown prince. He's pushing Prince Wang into the fire pit. Those who knew about Jiang Chen's identity felt their hearts in their throats. Especially Wang Xuanzhong. He felt that the prince's estate had reached its end. I say, I'm in your territory. If I'm killed as the crown prince, you'll lose a lot of face, right? Jiang Chen raised his head and looked at the boundless sky with a mocking smile. In the next moment, a figure wearing a dragon robe descended from the sky. He had a smile on his face as he slowly landed beside Jiang Chen. He patted Jiang Chen's shoulder and said with a hint of blame, "Why didn't you tell me you were coming to the Zhongzhou dynasty? How long has it been since we last met? I wanted to see you, but as you can see, your subordinates seem to want to kill me." Jiang Chen smiled bitterly. At this moment, everyone in the prince's estate was kneeling. Even the arrogant and unruly crown prince was kneeling on the ground as his entire body trembled. He wasn't stupid. He was just too arrogant before. Now, after listening to the conversation between Jiang Chen and Li Fingzi, he knew that he was in trouble today. However, when he remembered that his father was Prince Wang, the leader of the Zhongzhou dynasty's 5 great princes, he felt much more at ease. However, he didn't know that Wang Xuanzhong was thinking about whether he should have another son and make another crown prince. Prince Wang, you don't know his identity? At this moment, Li Fingzi's expression became serious. He had the aura of a crown prince. He stared at Prince Wang, and the coldness in his eyes became more intense. Before Prince Wang could reply, Li Fingzi said softly, "In consideration of Prince Wang's family's contributions to the Zhongzhou dynasty over the years, I'll let you settle today's matter yourself." Then Li Fingzi looked at Jiang Chen and said, "You have to satisfy sect leader Quan Zun." Yes. I'll do it right away." Prince Wang felt as if he had been pardoned. He quickly looked at Jiang Chen and asked, "Sect leader, what do you think about this? Those who kill should always be killed." Jiang Chen only said these words, but they were enough to express his attitude. This? Prince Wang was stunned for a moment, then he let out a long sigh. He couldn't possibly destroy the entire prince's mansion for one son. Moreover, he had more than one son. Damn it! Prince Wang sighed in his heart. Then, in front of Jiang Chen and Li Fingzi, he raised his hand and pressed it down on the crown prince's head. "Father! I'm your son! I'm the crown prince of the Wang mansion." The crown prince was shocked. He had never thought that his biological father would kill his own son in front of so many people. "Unfilial son! Do you know that you almost destroyed the Wang mansion?" Wang Xuanzhong was furious. Until now, his son had not shown any signs of repentance. This made him very disappointed. One had to know that Wang Xuanzhong's strength was enough to kill the crown prince in an instant. However, his actions were slow. He wanted to give his son a chance to reflect. If he knew, he wouldn't have said these words. Instead, he would have begged Jiang Chen for mercy. But now, bang! In the end, Wang Xuanzhong still killed his son with a single palm strike. Jiang Chen and Li Fingzi saw this scene, but they were very calm. "Killing his own son," Jiang Chen whispered. He couldn't help but look at Li Fingzi and said, "Now you're the royal lord." Chapter 594. One must be ruthless in order to stand firm. Li Fengzi calmly said. Everyone knows that my position as the royal lord was obtained by usurping the throne. I imprisoned my father and killed all of my brothers. Therefore, what Wang Xuanzhong was doing right now was not worth mentioning. In Li Fengzi's eyes, the world was chaotic and the mortal world was bitter. The world of cultivators was even more unreasonable. If one was strong enough, their words and actions would be the law. If one was not strong enough, they would have to listen to others even if they were in a high position. Just like Jiang Chun from before. If he didn't have that status and strength, he would have died in the hands of the royal prince. Royal Prince Wang, as the leader of the 5 royal princes, you should make a statement and erect a memorial arch. Don't let others laugh at the 5 royal princes. Li Fengzi coldly said and waved his hand. Go bury him. As you wish. Wang Xuanzhong wiped his cold sweat and secretly glanced at Jiang Chun from the corner of his eyes. Seeing that Jiang Chun didn't say anything, his heart calmed down. It seems that this matter is over. Wang Xuanzhong thought and hurriedly ordered people to take away the royal prince's corpse. Afterward, Jiang Chun and Li Fengzi left and entered the palace. What? The great Chuanzuan sect master has the time to come to my place? Li Fengzi teased. The current Chuanzuan sect is not weaker than my Central Continent dynasty, right? It's just an empty shell. Jiang Chun wryly smiled. The Central Continent dynasty has a deep foundation that has been passed down for several generations. How can the Chuanzuan sect compare to it? Keep in mind that if it wasn't for the Nayland clan and Beta Sheng joining the Chuanzuan sect, what could the Chuanzuan sect amount to? You haven't seen each other since the battle at the Billowing Wave Institute, right? Li Fengzi softly said. Seems like it. Jiang Chun nodded. Thinking about that period of time, it was indeed a sentimental experience. Not long ago, the two of them were still young. Now they were still young. However, one became the royal prince while the other became the royal prince. One was revered by tens of thousands of people, while the other was crowned by the heavens and became the public enemy of the world. I say, shouldn't the firmament coronation technique be dispelled? Li Feng said straightforwardly. If you don't undo the firmament coronation technique, there will only be more and more people who want to kill you. It's time to undo it. Jiang Chun nodded. Now that he had stepped into the heavenly tier, his combat strength was enough to protect himself. There was no need for the heavens to crown him. However, Jiang Chun didn't want to undo the heavens coronation technique so easily. Cough, cough. At this moment, Jiang Chun coughed a few times and said seriously, unlocking the crown of the heavens technique requires many rare treasures and elixirs. It would be best to have something like the elixir of longevity. Otherwise, I'm afraid it won't be unlocked without 3,000 to 5,000 years. Li Fengzi nodded and seriously looked at Jiang Chun. He slowly gave a thumbs up and sincerely praised. You are as shameless as ever. Unlocking the firmament coronation technique didn't require any rare treasures at all, let alone elixirs. As long as the caster was willing, it could be unlocked at any time. However, Jiang Chun was obviously a scammer. He didn't want to undo the firmament coronation technique just like that. Jiang Chun was very clear that the godless mainland was now ushering in a golden age. Many cultivators who were once stuck at the heavenly decay stage had basically broken through and could cross the divine tribulation. Those old monsters didn't have any good things in their hands? Since they had good things, they naturally had to share them. Not sharing? Sure, then don't cross the divine tribulation. Recently, the war has caused my Central State Dynasty's treasury to be empty. Li Fengzi sighed and said, This matter has troubled me. When Jiang Chun heard this, his expression was strange. He stared at Li Fengzi and said, How about you do things and I split the profits? This amount? Li Fengzi stretched out 5 fingers. This meant that he wanted to split the profits with Jiang Chun 50-50. 50-50. Jiang Chun was of course unwilling. After all, the initiative was in his hands now. 30-70. When the time comes, I'll get 70% and you get 30%. Jiang Chun was very serious. Otherwise, there's no discussion. Deal. He thought that Li Fingzi would still bargain, but he didn't expect this guy to directly agree. At this moment, Jiang Chen's face darkened. He secretly thought that his mouth was really cheap. What, 30-70? If he had directly said 91, Li Fingzi would have probably agreed, right? After all, Li Fingzi only needed to use the name of the Central State Dynasty to gather all the powerhouses who were about to cross the divine tribulation. This was simply a small matter for Li Fingzi. By the way, help me inquire about the situation of Xuanzuan sect, Jiang Chen said. It's not convenient for me to move around at will now, so I can only stay in the Central State Dynasty for a while. What about the protection fee? Li Fingzi raised his eyebrows. Don't you want my Central State Dynasty to protect you by staying here? Don't you have a protection fee? Cough, cough. Do I look like a rich person to you? Jiang Chen curled his lips. Yes. Li Fingzi stared at Jiang Chen and said, You didn't get anything good in the bloody road? I heard that. You have immortal gold on you, right? My chasing heaven sword is broken. Those immortal gold are the things that I prepared to forge my own Tao-confirming treasure. Don't have any ideas? Jiang Chen hastily said, looking at Li Fingzi as if he was guarding against a thief. Jiang Chen was also puzzled. The previous Li Fingzi was not like this. Now that he had become the ruler of a country, how did he become such a swindler? Could it be that swindlers are also contagious? All right, from now on, the Central State Dynasty and Xuanzuan sect will stand on the united front. I won't collect your protection fee, Li Fingzi said. Speaking of this matter, Li Fingzi's heart twitched. Those heaven-human stage powerhouses who were sent to help Xuanzuan sect were all dead. This loss was too great. It's best if a few more top sects come, otherwise, we won't be able to defeat the 18 families, Jiang Chen said. Jiang Chen was very clear about the background of the 18 families. Xuanzuan sect and the Central State Dynasty alone were definitely not a match for the 18 families. It would be best if a few top sects, families, and a few major forces joined forces. Only then would they have a chance to contend against the 18 families. Otherwise, they would be defeated one by one. First deal with the coronation of heaven, Li Fingzi said. When the time comes, just listen to me. Oh? Jiang Chen was stunned. Could it be that Li Fingzi had already prepared for this? This little bastard is really crafty. Just like this, after the two of them discussed some things, they each went about their own business. At the same time, Jiang Chen asked Li Fingzi to help him contact Mu Yud. Bastard. When I return to the godless continent, when will I return the body of the mysterious sky divine king to me? Jiang Chen thought in his heart, he felt that meeting Mu Yud was the most unlucky thing in his life. Chapter 595. Time flew by. A month had passed since Jiang Chen entered the Central State Dynasty. During this month, Jiang Chen had been inquiring about Mu Yud and the Xuanzuan sect. What made Jiang Chen feel relieved was that the Xuanzuan sect was fine. The experts in the sect had joined hands and moved the Xuanzuan sect into a small world. They had sealed the entrance of the small world and concealed their aura. In this way, the 18 families would have to spend a lot of time to find the Xuanzuan sect. The only thing that gave Jiang Chen a headache was Mu Yud. He was nowhere to be found. After coming out of the bloody path, Mu Yud had disappeared. No one knew where he had gone. Now, not only Jiang Chen was worried, but Nian Chang'e was also worried to death. After all, not only was the body of the mysterious Sky Supreme being in Mu Yud's hands, even Nian Chang'e's body was hidden by that bastard. Their bodies could not be merged. For Jiang Chen and Nian Chang'e, it was a big deal. During this month, Li Fingzi had been helping Jiang Chen. The Central State Dynasty had announced to the world that Jiang Chen was in the dynasty, and he had invited all the experts who were about to cross the divine tribulation to a gathering. Although it was called a gathering, everyone knew that it was just a transaction. But for those who were about to cross the divine tribulation, it was better than being trapped in the godless continent and unable to ascend. 3 days later, almost everyone will be here. You name your price and I will collect the money, We will share the spoils together, Li Fingzi said. Jiang Chun was relieved to see Li Fingzi doing things. After waiting quietly for 3 days, a banquet was held in the Central State Dynasty. On this day, the forbidden sky domain of the Central State Dynasty disappeared. One by one, the experts flew into the sky and entered the imperial palace. Among them, there were some old monsters who had lived for tens of thousands of years. These people had no hope of crossing the divine tribulation. Their cultivation had been stuck at the bottleneck of the heavens decay stage. But with the arrival of the Golden Age, cultivation became easier and easier. These people had endured until the end. Now, they had broken through the bottleneck and were about to cross the divine tribulation. Some even saw a few ancestors who had lived for a very long time. These people were all important figures of their respective sects, clans, and powers. Therefore, today, the Central Continent Dynasty removed the Forbidden Sky domain to give these people face. What's the situation today? There are so many people from the Central Continent Dynasty. I saw an old man. He seems to be someone from 30,000 years ago. I heard that he is dead. How is he still alive? What's so surprising about a person from 30,000 years ago? I even saw an expert from 60,000 years ago. What is that guy's zodiac sign? How can he live for so long? The entire imperial city was very lively. Everyone was guessing what these people were doing here. Inside the palace, however, the atmosphere was somewhat stifling. Inside and outside the imperial palace, all the heaven-tier powerhouses of the Central State Dynasty were dispatched to guard the imperial palace. They were deeply afraid that these foreign heaven-tier powerhouses would cause trouble here. Inside the imperial palace, Li Fingzi sat on the throne. Beside him, a chair was specially moved. Jiang Chun was sitting there with his legs crossed. He gave off an unrestrained feeling. Below him there were a total of 12 people sitting there. When they looked at Jiang Chun, their eyes were full of hostility. I say, since everyone is here, let's make things clear today. At this moment, an old man in a purple robe stood up. He stared at Jiang Chun and asked, "Tell me, what do you want to undo the heavenly coronation technique?" Everyone, please calm down. Cough, cough. Jiang Chun stood up. After a few words, he started coughing violently. Puff! Then, in front of everyone, Jiang Chun spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale and his whole body trembled. What's going on? The group of people was dumbfounded. Why did he spit out blood all of a sudden? Only Li Fingzi looked indifferent. How could he not know what was going on with Jiang Chun? Damn it, he was deliberately forcing out a mouthful of essence blood. He was pretending. Imperial Lord. He is. Someone frowned. They were still quite respectful towards Li Fingzi. After all, Li Fingzi was the Imperial Lord now. To be honest, this brother of mine was seriously injured in the blood path. Li Fingzi sighed and said, "Now, it's not that he doesn't want to undo the heavenly coronation technique. It's just that his injuries are too serious. It's difficult for him to form a seal." Sigh. As he spoke, Li Fingzi's face became more and more ugly. He seemed to be very worried about Jiang Chun. He poured a tube of spiritual energy into Jiang Chun. Everyone, I know that all of you want to ascend, but I'm really powerless now. Jiang Chun took a few deep breaths and said very weakly, I've looked for a famous alchemist. He told me that this injury is very difficult to heal. Without some heavenly treasures, elixirs, and miraculous medicines, I'm afraid. As soon as these words came out, the group's faces suddenly collapsed. One had to know that this group of people were all smart people. How could Jiang Chun fool them with just a few words? Moreover, they were not blind. They had already noticed Jiang Chun's state. It looked like he was coughing up blood, but in reality, his blood energy was surging. He was lively like a dragon and a tiger. It was as if he was about to die. Let's not beat around the bush. Just say it directly. A big man stood up and said directly, Don't you just want to fish for some benefits? I have a top-grade elixir here. It can regrow bones and reforge the body. It can also wash the marrow and bones. As long as you still have a breath left, it can save you. Oh? Where is it? Take a look. Take it out and let me take a look. Jiangqun and Li Fingzi stared at each other. This kind of elixir was rare in the world. It was kept by those big shots to save their lives. 9 transformations golden body elixir. The big man did not hesitate. He took out an elixir that shone with a reddish gold radiance and said, I don't know if you're seriously injured, but with this elixir, even if you're crippled and only have a wisp of your soul left, you can still recover. Then I won't stand on ceremony, Jiangqun said with a smile. However, before he could reach out, Li Fingzi's figure flashed and directly appeared in front of the big man. He grabbed the 9 transformations golden body elixir and said with a very serious expression, I'll keep this for now. When I'm sure that the heavenly coronation technique can be broken, I'll give it to him. What do you mean by sure? Even if he's seriously injured, this elixir can heal him. Let him take the elixir, and he'll be able to break the heavenly coronation technique immediately. The big man said in shock. You may not know, but my injury is not ordinary. It's a Tao injury. Jiangqun sighed. A 9 transformations golden body elixir can only heal my superficial injuries. A Tao injury needs a Tao item to heal. As soon as he said that, the group of old monsters' faces fell. Chapter 596. What was a treasure of the Great Tao? It was a treasure nurtured by the Great Tao. That kind of thing could not be found even once in 1,000 years. Now, Jiangqun was asking for an exorbitant price. Everyone, since I invited you here, I am here to solve the problem of the heaven's coronation technique, Li Fingzi said. As long as you cure Jiangqun's injury, you can cross the tribulation. We are all mortals, and our lifelong dream is to become gods, Li Fingzi said. Now, the opportunity to become gods is in front of you. Are you going to give up? If not for the fact that my Central State Dynasty's treasury is empty, why would I need you to help me? If I, Li Fingzi, could take out a treasure of the Great Tao, I would have already given it to him. I don't want any reward, Li Fingzi said with a strong sense of righteousness. Jiangqun secretly gave him a thumbs up, thinking that this was a godlike teammate. Good help. Everyone, you know my identity. I am Tianqin Deity King, Jiangqun said. If you can go through the heavenly tribulation and ascend to the divine realm of 9 clouds, I'll ask my disciples, and friends to take care of you. Won't that be great? You have just ascended and can't stand firm in the 9th heaven. I will pave the way for you. After you become gods, won't it be smooth sailing? Jiangqun said. When these words came out, everyone was very tempted. However, someone said with a black face, You were also killed by someone before you reincarnated. Who knows how many enemies you have in the 9th heaven divine world? If it's related to us, I'm afraid we'll be killed as soon as we ascend, right? Yes. You were killed by others before reincarnating. Someone reacted, and said with a black face, You can pave the way for us, but you have to solve the heaven's coronation technique first. Then, my injury. Jiangqun wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, thinking that this group of old monsters was not easy to fool. Emperor, today is your territory, and you are the judge. What I mean is, as long as you give him the treasure of the Great Tao, he will be willing to solve the heaven's coronation technique. Someone asked. Of course. I guarantee it in the name of the monarch of the Central State Dynasty, Li Fingzi said seriously. But what if he doesn't agree? Someone frowned. He had also heard that Jiangqun was a swindler. Back then, when he accepted Bai Fengyu as his disciple, he even asked Bai Jiangye for a large sum of spirit stones. Everyone! I can make a blood oath, Jiangqun hurriedly said. Today, these old monsters, no matter what, they had to bleed. However, as soon as Jiangqun said this, the group of old monsters almost vomited blood. They had already inquired about Jiangqun. How could they not know that he had many tricks up his sleeves and had mastered many secret techniques and forbidden techniques? What could a mere blood oath do to Jiangqun? Make a blood oath? To Jiang Qin, this was like a fart. I say, why don't we let the monarch make a blood oath? Someone suggested. If he makes a blood oath, we can still believe it. But if you make a blood oath, is there any difference between that and farting? Jiang Qin was stunned. What? Other people's blood oath is useful, but mine is like a fart? But thinking about it carefully, it did seem to make sense. Me? Li Fingzi was dumbfounded. What does this have to do with me? You want me to make a blood oath? Please, Jiang Qin, this monarch, I can't defeat him. Cough, cough, brotherly, this matter depends on you. Jiang Qin patted Li Fingzi's shoulder and then covered his chest, saying, whether my Dao injury can be healed or not, it depends on you. I have 8 lifetimes of bad luck to know you. Li Fingzi's face was dark, but he still made a blood oath in front of everyone. This time, the group of people calmed down. Then, 3 people handed over their Dao items. Among them, there was a chaotic green lotus, a 3 lives opposite shore flower, and a white jade bridge. It was said that they were natural items formed by condensing heaven-earth yuan qi. I say, everyone. You guys. Jiang Qin frowned and said, 1 for each person, isn't it too much? Look at the monarch, he has already made a blood oath. 3 items are not enough. This is not enough. Do you want to eat people? Bool ****. This is very fair. The 3 of us have already taken it out, why don't you? That's right. Take it all. Or we'll take it back. The few people who took out their Dao items were of course unhappy. At this moment, they were determined to stand on the same side as Jiang Qin. What the F***ck, deal? You tricked me. Then, the remaining people's faces darkened and they reluctantly handed over their Dao items. 12 Dao items, plus a 9 transformation golden body elixir, Jiang Qin could be said to have profited greatly this time. However, just when everyone thought that Jiang Qin would undo the heavenly coronation technique, Jiang Qin shook his head and said, not now. What? At this moment, Li Fingzi was the first to panic. He had made a blood oath. If Jiang Qin did not undo the heavenly coronation technique, the first to suffer would be him. Brother, you don't have to cheat us like this, right? Li Fingzi said anxiously. We've taken everything, hurry up and undo it. What I mean is, everyone has to give me a promise. Jiang Qin said. As you all know, now that 18 families are preparing to take control of the godless continent, if you can help, then I will naturally undo the heavenly coronation technique now. It's not that we don't want to help, but there are 2 demigods in the 18 families. Someone said solemnly. We are now at the peak of Deva's 5th decay, but we can't compete with demigods. That's right, aren't you asking for our lives? Someone said angrily. What I mean is, if you succeed in transcending the tribulation, you will stay on the godless continent for a period of time and wait for the divine light ascension passage. During that time, you are also considered demigods. Jiang Qin explained. At that time, you can try to fight with the 2 demigods. If you can't beat them, you can take the divine light ascension passage. There's no danger. This can be done. This can be done. If you can't beat them, run. No problem. The 18 families are the descendants of the traitors. If we have enough strength, we will naturally deal with them. I agree to this. In the end, the group finished their discussion. It was also on this day that Jiang Qin undid the heavenly coronation technique, and then began to divide the spoils with Li Fingzi. No, it was dividing the spoils. On the same day, on a plain 30,000 miles away from the Zhongzhou dynasty, the descendants, disciples, and followers of the 12 old monsters came one after another. It was because on this day, these 12 people were going to transcend the divine tribulation. Jiang Qin and Li Fingzi also came. After all, it was rare for 12 people to transcend the divine tribulation at the same time. However, Jiang Qin did not have much hope for these 12 people. After all, there was an old saying that 100 people transcended the divine tribulation, and 1 person ascended to the 9 heavens. The divine tribulation was not so easy to transcend. Chapter 597. Since ancient times, how many geniuses had fallen under this divine tribulation? How many powerhouses had been invincible for a lifetime but died an unnatural death during the divine tribulation? The divine tribulation was not only a test from the heavens for cultivators, but it was also a process of sublimation and transformation of life matter. People who had not gone through the divine tribulation would not understand the tempering and pain during the process of shedding the mortal body and attaining the divine body. At this moment, Jiang Qin had no confidence in these 12 people at all. Among these 12 people, Jiang Qin felt that it would be good if one or two could pass the divine tribulation. It could even be said to be a miracle. Back then, Jiang Qin was so powerful, but when he went through the divine tribulation, he was also struck half to death and almost died. If none of them pass, Li Fengzi frowned and said, "That's a pity." "What's a pity? They know better than anyone that passing the divine tribulation is equivalent to courting death," Jiang Qin said snappily. "But if they pass it, it's a kind of new life. What I mean is, if none of them pass it, who will we find to deal with the demigods of the 18 families?" Li Fengzi sighed. Jiang Qin fell silent when he said that. Of course, he hoped that these 12 people could pass the divine tribulation. At that time, what would those 2 demigods be? However, this hope was too slim. Ancestor has cultivated for 30,000 years and is finally going to pass the divine tribulation today. If he succeeds, our family will be glorious. My ancestor has cultivated for 60,000 years. Today, I believe that he will succeed. The surroundings were full of people. After all, it was rare to pass the divine tribulation, not to mention that 12 people were going through it together. Boom! Boom! Half a day later, someone adjusted his state. His aura soared into the sky and attracted the divine tribulation instantly. As far as the eye could see, the vast and mighty tribulation clouds were like a black dragon that had charged out from space, and it carried boundless lightning and divine light as it directly descended with a loud bang and drowned that person. Immediately after, another person attracted the divine tribulation. Just like the previous person, it disappeared in an instant. Everyone held their breaths and looked nervous. Some people's eyes were shining, wanting to see the scene under the lightning. However, the divine tribulation was extraordinary. How could ordinary people peek at it? Dead. A few breaths later, Jiang Qin sighed. The 2 divine tribulations lasted for less than 10 breaths of time before disappearing. This meant that those 2 were dead. The divine tribulation would last for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. In less than 10 breaths, the 2 of them had perished. This was too shocking for many people. One had to know, people who could transcend the divine tribulation were all pinnacle existences on the godless continent. But it was precisely this kind of person who couldn't even withstand 10 breaths of divine tribulation. Too terrifying! There's no hope at all! Many people were shocked, and they were even more doubtful about their own futures. Who could survive such a powerful divine tribulation? Could it be that these cultivators had cultivated their whole lives just to die under the tribulation? Then, what was the point of this kind of cultivation? Li Fengzi sighed and said, "Say, if there is a day when one doesn't need to undergo the divine tribulation to become a god, and all living beings in the world can become gods, how great would that be? Do you think it's possible?" Jiang Qin squinted, looking at Li Fengzi like looking at an idiot, and said, "The divine tribulation is a kind of tempering and transformation process for cultivators. If one doesn't transcend the divine tribulation, one simply can't withstand the laws and order of the 9 heavens divine realm. At that time, even if one ascends to the 9 heavens divine realm, they will be instantly obliterated by the laws and order of the 9 heavens divine realm." However, just as Jiang Qin finished speaking, Li Fengzi's eyes focused, as if he thought of something, and said, "I heard that in a very distant era, cultivators indeed didn't need to transcend the divine tribulation to become gods. However, that era was very ancient, and there weren't even any records in the ancient books. A long time ago, who could have guessed the environment at that time? Perhaps there was once no need to transcend the divine tribulation, but now it must be transcended," Jiang Qin said softly. Buzz! Boom! Right at this moment, among the remaining 10 people, another 3 people attracted the divine tribulation. At this moment, this side of heaven and earth seemed to have collapsed. Spiderweb-like cracks filled the sky. The lightning was vast and mighty, and it fell down like the sea, drowning the 3 people. However, a miracle did not happen. In a dozen breaths of time, these 3 people all fell, and the divine tribulation disappeared. The 3 people who were once glorious did not leave anything behind in the end, not even a wisp of ashes. 12 people, 5 are dead. Someone sighed, feeling that transcending the divine tribulation was courting death. There are still 7 left. I'm afraid none of them can become gods. Sigh, what is the point of cultivating to the end? Just to die under the divine tribulation? This, for cultivators like us, this is too pathetic. However, some people were very determined. They stared at the place where the divine tribulation disappeared and said, "Becoming a god is a kind of ultimate test. If you can't even pass this test, then why do you want to become a god? Don't even think about going to the 9th heaven divine world to experience the great rivers and mountains. Since cultivators have embarked on the path of cultivation, even if it means death, we must continue on. Cultivators of our generation can all cultivate." However, although that was the case, when it came to transcending the divine tribulation, it was cruel. At this moment, the remaining 7 people hesitated, and one of them seemed to be unable to bear the consequences. He actually lost his mind on the spot, his whole body burned, and finally self-destructed. I've cultivated for a lifetime, just for this moment. What am I afraid of? So what if it's a divine tribulation, someone once passed it, why can't I? I will, want, succeed, become a god. At this moment, the man in the wilderness roared, and a palm shot into the sky, attracting his own divine tribulation. In an instant, the sea of lightning shook, and divine light flew. The man in the wilderness was in the midst of the lightning, his whole body burning with blood chi. His blood essence turned into a battle robe, supporting his body. He was using his own blood essence as a guide to ignite the hope of becoming a god. At this moment, everyone's eyes fell on the man in the wilderness. He's an ancestor of the barbarian tribe. He seems to have lived for almost 100,000 years. This old monster has a deep foundation. I'm afraid he can really succeed. Someone revealed the man's identity. Jiangchen also stared at the man in the wilderness. After half an incense stick's time, the man was still alive. The divine tribulation was still there. Jiangchen, can you return the 9 transformations golden body pill to me? If I can transcend the divine tribulation, I owe you my life. At this moment, the man in the wilderness roared. He felt that he could not hold on any longer. The blood chi in his body had dried up, his blood essence could not be burned, and his physical body had begun to crack. The 9 transformations golden body pill that he gave Jiangchen was actually used by him to transcend the divine tribulation. However, he did not expect the divine tribulation to be so terrifying. Chapter 598. This burly man was really strong. He was an ancestor who had lived for nearly 100,000 years. He had a deep foundation and held on for more than half an hour with his own strength. But now, he couldn't hold on any longer. At this moment, Jiangchen didn't hesitate and directly threw the 9 transformation golden body elixir over. "Thank you." The burly man was excited. After swallowing the 9 transformation golden body elixir, his injuries were healed in an instant. His body was full of essence, chi, and spirit, and he had returned to his peak state. "He has become a god," Jiangchen whispered. He was also quite happy. Finally, one of them succeeded. Leafings aside. The road to becoming a god was really cruel. Next, the burly man stood under the divine tribulation and burned his essence, chi, and spirit. His blood chi was monstrous, and he vaguely wanted to cover up the divine tribulation. This was a fierce man. He didn't rely on any means to pass the divine tribulation. He relied on his own essence, chi, spirit, and blood chi. After half an hour, the divine tribulation disappeared. A divine light pierced the sky and fell from the ninth heaven divine realm, shining on his body. The divine light baptized him, shed his mortal body, and became a god. He condensed the divine realm's laws and comprehended the order of the divine realm. After that, he was a god. Of course, he still needed to stay on the godless continent for a while. Not only did he have to deal with some descendants, but he also had to wait for the passage of divine light to descend. Only then could he enter the ascension realm. The world calls me the Barbarian King. Brother Jiang, if you don't mind, you can call me Brother Barbarian. The Barbarian King was very excited. This was the first person to pass the divine tribulation in nearly 1,000 years. At the same time, the entire barbarian tribe was celebrating. Their ancestor had become a god. Brother Barbarian? Jiangchen raised his eyebrows and said jokingly, Brother Barbarian. I'm afraid you are not qualified to call me brother. Hearing this, the Barbarian King was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled bitterly and said, Yes, although your cultivation is relatively low now, in terms of seniority and identity, I am indeed lacking. Forget it, forget it. After being reborn, let's talk according to the identity of this life. Jiangchen waved his hand and stared at the Barbarian King. Remember, before you ascend, not only to deal with the two demigods, but also only a life. Of course. The Barbarian King nodded solemnly. All berserkers, listen up! From today onwards, all berserkers will be on good terms with Qianzuan's sect. When you see Qianzuan's sect's leader, you will treat him as if you see me. At this moment, the Barbarian King made a declaration, using secret methods to spread the news in all directions. On this day, the entire godless continent heard these words. What? The Qianzuan sect has roped in the barbarian tribe? Damn it! That Jiangchun is a scourge. We can't let him live. In the Nether Prefecture, the upper echelons of the 18 families were shocked, and their faces were extremely ugly. Currently, the Qianzuan sect had gathered the White Emperor City, the Nayland clan, the Middle Continent's royal dynasty, and now the Berserker tribe. This foundation was already very deep. With the Qianzuan sect's current strength, even the martial pavilion wouldn't dare to casually start a war with them. Brother Jiang, how many of them can pass the divine tribulation? Asked the Barbarian King. I'm afraid it will be very difficult. Jiangchen shook his head. How could it be so easy to pass the divine tribulation? Previously, Jiangchen had said that among the 12 people, it would be a miracle if 1 or 2 could pass the divine tribulation. Now that the Barbarian King had passed the divine tribulation, it was hard to say what would happen to the remaining people. If 1 more person can pass the divine tribulation, then we don't have to be afraid of the 18 families at all. Li Fengzi said, The reason why we don't dare to provoke the 18 families is that they have 2 demigods. If we have 2 people who have passed the divine tribulation, then the 18 families are nothing to us. However, the divine tribulation was too difficult to pass. Next, the remaining people were still adjusting their state of mind. More and more people were surrounding them. There were even a few people from the 18 families who were secretly lurking around, spying on the situation. However, it was a pity that after 3 days, none of the remaining people had passed the divine tribulation. In the end, only the Barbarian King had passed the divine tribulation. Regarding this, Jiangchen was not surprised. After all, the divine tribulation was difficult to pass. In the next few days, the Barbarian King first made a trip to the barbarian tribe to settle the matters after his ascension. Then, he came to the Zhongzhou dynasty to stay with Jiangchen. During this time, what Jiangchen did not expect was that the martial pavilion actually came to congratulate the Barbarian King on becoming a divine tribulation. Moreover, they also gave Jiangchen a gift. This made Jiangchen a little puzzled. Did the martial pavilion want to reconcile with him? But was this possible? Would Jiangchen agree? Go back and tell the current leader of the martial pavilion that the martial pavilion is responsible for what it has done. Jiangchen said bluntly. He would not accept the Martial Pavilion's reconciliation. Brother Jiang, the Martial Pavilion is still the strongest force in the godless continent. Since they are here to reconcile, why don't you agree? The barbarian king asked. From the beginning, it was impossible for me to reconcile with the Martial Pavilion, Jiangchen said in a deep voice. Let's not talk about what the Martial Pavilion has done to me. Just based on that martial god in the ninth heaven divine realm, I will not let the Martial Pavilion go. The current Martial Pavilion has nothing to fear, but if Lin Lang Wetian comes out from the third mountain, then it will be a different story, the barbarian king said seriously. No one knew what was in the third mountain. However, during this time, there were many strange phenomena in the third mountain. It seemed like someone had become a divine tribulation. For thousands of years, only Lin Lang Wetian had entered the third mountain. Then, was the strange phenomenon in the third mountain related to Lin Lang Wentian? If it was really related to him, then did Lin Lang Wentian really become a divine tribulation in the godless continent? A divine tribulation on the land? Let's not talk about this first. Now that you have become a divine tribulation, although you have not ascended, you have part of the power of a divine tribulation, Jiangchen said. Now it's time to make a move and test the background of the 18 families. Oh? Now? The barbarian king frowned slightly. Although he had become a divine tribulation, he could only be considered a demigod in the godless continent. Only when he ascended to the divine realm of the 9 heavens and went through the transformation and nurturing of the laws and order of the divine realm could he be considered a true divine tribulation. There were 2 demigods in the 18 families, but there was only one barbarian king. The most important thing was that the 2 demigods in the 18 families were once true divine tribulation. Now that their cultivation had fallen to the demigod level, they had mastered the divine skills and magical powers that a divine tribulation should have. The barbarian king, on the other hand, knew nothing. I'll teach you a divine tribulation technique and a few divine skills. You can cultivate it first. When the divine light channel appears, you can go to the 18 families with me, Jiangchen said. Really? The barbarian king was excited. Divine tribulation techniques and divine skills were almost impossible to find on the godless continent. These things could only be obtained after entering the divine realm of the 9 heavens and joining a sect. It's just a little thing. Jiangchen waved his hand. He had many divine tribulation techniques and martial skills in his hands. What could he do if he just gave out a few? Then, Jiangchen taught the 9 stages of Xingming mantra to the barbarian king, and also taught him the divine skills Yang Ming Finger and Yin Ming Finger. After the barbarian king thanked him, he immediately went into seclusion and began to cultivate the divine tribulation technique and divine skills. Chapter 599. The barbarian king was in seclusion, and Li Fingzhou was busy dealing with Zhong Zhou's affairs. He had no time to accompany Jiangchen. 3 days later, without telling anyone, Jiangchen left alone and headed to the Martial Pavilion's headquarters. On this day, the Martial Pavilion's headquarters was in an uproar because Jiangchen came to the Martial Pavilion's gate alone. What is he doing here? Is he here to cause trouble? The people of the Martial Pavilion were shocked. They knew how high Jiangchen's status was and how powerful the force behind him was. If Jiangchen came to cause trouble today, then it would not be a small matter. Qianzuan sect's leader, Jiangchen, is here to visit the Martial Pavilion's leader. At this moment, Jiangchen spoke softly, but his voice echoed like thunder. After 3 breaths, Ji Chongyang walked out of the Martial Pavilion with a strange expression. Before entering the path of blood, Jiangchen was nothing but an ant in his eyes. But now, the ant in his eyes had become a powerhouse of the heavenly being realm and the leader of a top sect. Martial Pavilion's acting leader, Ji Chongyang, greets Jiangchen, leader. Ji Chongyang bowed. Now that their statuses were similar, they could no longer fight as they wished. Long time no see. Jiangchen smiled and walked to Ji Chongyang's side naturally. He patted his shoulder and asked, "How do you feel about being the acting leader?" "Leader, you must be joking. I'm just the acting leader. When the pavilion leader returns, this position will be returned to him, Ji Chongyang said hurriedly. Although being the acting leader felt great, Ji Chongyang did not dare to have any other thoughts. The martial pavilion's current status and achievements were all because of Lin Lang Wentian alone. As long as Lin Lang Wentian was still alive, the real leader of the martial pavilion would not be changed. Now, does the martial pavilion still want to kill me? Jiang Chen asked. His eyes flashed, as if he would attack at any moment. Ji Chongyang heard this and his expression froze. After a moment of silence, he smiled and said, "It was all a misunderstanding." "Oh? Misunderstanding?" Jiang Chen's eyes suddenly turned cold as he asked. "Trying to kill me is a misunderstanding? Forcing me into the underworld region was also a misunderstanding? Was it also a misunderstanding when you forced me into a dead end and forced me into a bloody path? Let's not talk about this. The martial pavilion has made a big fuss several times and sent heaven-tier powerhouses to kill me. Was this also a misunderstanding?" Facing Jiang Chen's questions, Ji Chongyang fell silent again. How could those things be explained with the word misunderstanding? If it weren't for Jiang Chen's high cultivation and the Qianzuan's sex strength, the martial pavilion wouldn't have let Jiang Chen go. "Actually, we all know that the enmity between me and the martial pavilion cannot be resolved," Jiang Chen said. "It's just that no one dares to make the first move. My martial pavilion has never feared anyone or anything," Ji Chongyang said in a low voice. His attitude was very tough, but he didn't say anything. In other words, if Jiang Chen wanted to fight, then the martial pavilion would naturally accompany him to the end. Not afraid of anyone? Not afraid of anything?" Jiang Chen sneered and said. "Since the birth of the 18 families, the martial pavilion has been holed up together. Is this not afraid of anything? Not afraid of people? Now, in the eyes of the world, the martial pavilion is no longer the overlord of the godless continent. The overlords of the godless continent are the 18 families." As soon as he said this, a trace of anger flashed in Ji Chongyang's eyes. Indeed, the martial pavilion had holed up, but it didn't mean that the martial pavilion was afraid of the 18 families. Since the martial pavilion could control the godless continent in the past, it had enough strength and foundation. Now, even if Lin Lang Wentian wasn't around, the martial pavilion was still the martial pavilion of the past. However, some things couldn't be explained. Just like the martial pavilion now. In fact, something had happened internally. Do you know why my martial pavilion gathered all the disciples, followers, consecrators, guests, and even the affiliated families and sects? Ji Chongyang asked. Let's hear it. Jiang Chen was also curious. In his impression, the martial pavilion was indeed not such a cowardly force. Have you heard of the Eternal Fortress? Ji Chongyang asked again. Eternal Fortress? Jiang Chen's eyes narrowed. He had heard these 3 words more than once. According to Mu Yud, there was a road that led to the Eternal Fortress under the River of Forgetfulness. However, Jiang Chen didn't know where the Eternal Fortress was and what it was used for. Jiang Chen only knew that his reincarnation had a lot to do with the Eternal Fortress. Moreover, the Qin Kong clan had disappeared overnight. It was said that they had gone to the Eternal Fortress. The martial pavilion has already received the alliance order. It won't be long before we go to the Eternal Fortress. Ji Chongyang sighed and said, Once we go to the Eternal Fortress, we won't be able to come back. We used to have so many grudges between us, but once we enter the Eternal City, these grudges will disappear like smoke and will no longer exist. Won't be able to come back after going to the Eternal Fortress? Jiang Chen was stunned. Didn't that mean that he would never see the Qin Kong scholar again? The man who once protected Jiang Chen, the man who once made Jiang Chen give up the Divine King's godhead, he would never be able to see him again. The entire Qin Kong clan was going to be removed from the godless continent from now on? It's not that the martial pavilion doesn't want to deal with the 18 clans, but because of the alliance order, the martial pavilion can't send a single soldier. We can only wait for news from the Eternal Fortress. Ji Chongyang sighed. At this point, Ji Chongyang's eyes flashed with bitterness. He didn't know what kind of place the Eternal Fortress was, but he knew that since the Alliance order had come to the Martial Pavilion, the Martial Pavilion had no choice in the future. What's the Alliance order? The Martial Pavilion has to obey a small token? Jiang Chen asked. I don't know the details. I've only seen it in ancient books. Once the Alliance order is issued, the world will respect it, Ji Chongyang said. If it doesn't obey, it will be destroyed. What a domineering Alliance order! Jiang Chen's eyes narrowed. After saying that, Jiang Chen suddenly laughed and said, I'm not here to listen to the Martial Pavilion today. I don't want to know about the Eternal Fortress, and I don't want to know what the Alliance order is. Oh? Then why are you here? Ji Chongyang asked. I'm just here to ask, is the Martial Pavilion going to take action against the 18 clans? Jiang Chen's expression turned serious as he stared at Ji Chongyang. Hearing this, Ji Chongyang immediately let out a bitter laugh and said, I already told you that the Martial Pavilion is not allowed to send a single soldier because of the alliance agreement. The godless continent is ruled by 18 clans, and the Martial Pavilion doesn't care? Jiang Chen said in a low voice. It's not that we don't care, but we really can't interfere. Ji Chongyang sighed. With the Qianzuan sect's current strength and foundation, it won't be long before the Alliance order descends on the Qianzuan sect. At that time, you'll understand what the Alliance order is. After saying that, Ji Chongyang waved his hand and said, If there's nothing else, please go back. Chapter 600. With the Covenant order, the Martial Pavilion couldn't attack and could only wait for orders from the Eternal City. However, the entire Martial Pavilion didn't know what the Eternal City was. However, the Covenant order was no small matter, so they could only wait. At this moment, Jiang Chen glanced at Ji Chongyang and said softly, Grudges won't disappear with the passage of time. I remember what the Martial Pavilion did to me in the past. What do you want? Ji Chongyang's tone gradually turned cold. Although the Qianzuan sect was strong now, the Martial Pavilion wasn't weak either. If it weren't for the Covenant order, the Martial Pavilion wouldn't have held up together. Now, listening to Jiang Chen's words, it seemed like they were going to start a war. Nothing, I just came here today to express my attitude, Jiang Chen said softly. With that, Jiang Chen turned and left. Ji Chongyang looked at Jiang Chen's back as he left. His face was ashen, and there was a burning anger in his heart. He was once an ant, but now he had become a giant. Back then, if he had been ruthless and attacked regardless of everything, how could the current Jiang Chen be? However, the past couldn't be undone, and there was no use regretting it. You went to the Martial Pavilion? Half a day later, Jiang Chen returned to the Zhongzhou dynasty, and Li Fengzi came to find him. He knew what Jiang Chen had done, but he couldn't help but ask. I went for a walk. Jiang Chen nodded and frowned. The Martial Pavilion can't be underestimated. The Martial Pavilion has always been strong, Li Fengzi said. With that, Li Fengzi looked up to the sky and sighed. He placed an ancient token in Jiang Chen's hand. This token was engraved with obscure patterns. Upon closer inspection, it looked like an ancient, army, character. During this period, an aura of vicissitudes of life was emitted from the token. Obviously, this token had been around for a long time. For me? Jiang Chen was stunned. Why would someone give him a token out of the blue? It's not for you. Someone sent it to my Central Continent dynasty. Li Fengzi's eyes were full of helplessness. He pointed at the token in Jiang Chen's hand and said, Do you know what this is? Never seen him before. Jiang Chen shook his head. The Covenant Order, Li Fengzi said. Once the Covenant Order is issued, all living beings in this world will have no choice but to obey. After saying that, Li Fengzi took out a blood-stained silk book. There were 3 ancient words written on it, Eternal Fortress. This was sent along with the Writ of Alliance. It seems like my Central Continent dynasty will also have to leave this place. Li Fengzi sighed. When Jiang Chen heard this, he was shocked. He had just heard about the Writ of Alliance from Ji Chongyang. Who would have thought that as soon as he returned, the Central Continent Imperial Court would also receive the Order of Alliance? Did this mean that the Central State Dynasty was also going to the Eternal City? Can I not go? Jiang Chen asked. I can't not go. Li Fengzi shook his head. Then, he threw an ancient book to Jiang Chen and said, Take a closer look at what the Covenant Order represents. What can it represent? Jiang Chen curled his lips. Wasn't it just a token? Was there a need to make such a big deal out of it? However, when Jiang Chen saw the Covenant Order recorded in the ancient book, his expression changed drastically. According to the ancient book, in an ancient era, there was once a peerless powerhouse who used the flesh and bones of deities to build an ancient city. This city cut off the path of future generations and sealed the sky of the foreign land. That ancient city had always existed since it was built. It had never collapsed. Every few eras or years, the Eternal City would send out the Covenant Order to all the major sects, clans, and forces to guard the Eternal City. According to the ancient book, if the Eternal City fell, the godless continent would also be gone. And this writ of alliance was created when the Eternal Fortress was built. At that time, all the living beings of the godless continent worked together to create the Covenant Order and made a blood oath to the heavens. Anyone who saw the Covenant Order must go to the Eternal City. Otherwise, there would be a great disaster and destruction. This time, I'm afraid I won't be able to come back. Li Fengzi sighed. Ever since he received the Covenant Order, he searched through many ancient books. In the end, he saw something about the Eternal City in a yellow book. It was a fortress, a perimeter wall, and an eye of the formation. Once they reached the Eternal City, they would have to face the living beings of the foreign land in the future. After reaching there, they would have to fight again and again until they died in battle and shed their last drop of blood. Since the establishment of the Eternal City, no less than 100 sects, clans, and forces of the godless continent and the flowing heaven domain entered the Eternal City. And none of these sects, clans, and forces could return. They were either still fighting in the Eternal City, or had died in battle. If the Eternal City collapses, the godless continent will be gone, Li Fengzi said in a deep voice. That is a barrier between the foreign land and the godless continent. If the Eternal City collapses, the foreign land will invade the godless continent. If it wasn't for the world, who would be willing to defend it to the death? When Jiang Chen heard this, he couldn't help but sigh. What kind of war was that? Since the establishment of the Eternal City, the war was still going on. Or could it be that the war had already begun before the Eternal City was established? According to the Alliance Order, the Central State Dynasty can't take action, Li Fengzi said and patted Jiang Chen's shoulder helplessly. I can't help you with the matter of the 18 clans. It's okay, there's still the barbarian tribe, Jiang Chen said, but he had no confidence in his heart. Previously, even with the addition of the Central State Dynasty and the barbarian tribe, Jiang Chen didn't have the confidence to defeat the 18 clans. Now, without the Central State Dynasty, Jiang Chen's power became weaker and weaker. It could even be said that the power in Jiang Chen's hands was no longer enough to contend against the 18 clans. Don't count on the barbarian tribe. Li Fengzi had a strange expression and said, The barbarian tribe also received the Alliance Order. What? Jiang Chen exclaimed. This meant that after all this time, the Qianzuan sect still hadn't changed. The barbarian tribe and the Central State Dynasty had left, but the Qianzuan sect was still the same Qianzuan sect. How could they contend against the 18 clans? That's not right. During this period of time, several clans, sects, and dynasties have received the Alliance Order. Jiang Chen frowned. Has such a thing happened before? The Alliance Order has been issued frequently? There's only one possibility. The Eternal City can't hold on any longer, Li Fengzi said in a low voice. Only when the Eternal City is facing a calamity will the Alliance Order be issued frequently. In the beginning, it was the Qin Kong clan, then the Martial Pavilion, the Mo clan, and so on. Now, within a day, the Central State Dynasty and the Barbarian tribe have received the Alliance Order one after another, Li Fengzi explained. The Eternal City. I'm afraid it's going to collapse. The top sects have all left, so what about the 18 clans? No one can contend with them, and when they gain control of the godless continent and open the door of darkness, the alien creatures will still be able to invade the godless continent. Jiangchen said in a deep voice. Are we now facing internal and external troubles? Chapter 601. The Eternal City was in a state of emergency. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent out the Alliance order so frequently. However, the godless continent was also in imminent danger. Once the 18 families ruled the godless continent and opened the door of darkness, those foreign creatures could enter the godless continent without going through the Eternal City. At that time, the godless continent would be protected. The Eternal City is very important. Since we have received the Alliance order, we must go, Li Fengzi said. As for the godless continent... At this point, Li Fengzi patted Jiang Chen's shoulder and looked at him. I believe in you. Believe in me? Jiang Chen was stunned. Are you kidding me? I'm only at Heaven's Blight, and there are 2 demigods in the 18 families. In the current situation, the 18 families had the ability to unify the godless continent without the 2 demigods. However, the 18 families had suffered heavy losses and hadn't continued to expand their forces. They were probably waiting for the 2 demigods to appear. Once the 2 demigods appeared, it was only a matter of time before the godless continent fell. You are the Divine King, Li Fengzi said. Now, not only do we have to believe in you, but you also have to believe in yourself. Otherwise, who will save the world? Jiang Chen heard this and couldn't help but curl his lips. He muttered, Who wants to save the world? If possible, I just want to be with the people around me and spend the rest of my life peacefully. But you have no choice, Li Fengzi said. Then, Li Fengzi looked at the sky as if he was thinking about something. After a dozen breaths, he slowly asked, The Divine King of Heaven origin is your previous incarnation, right? Yes. Jiang Chen nodded. This was no longer a secret. Then you should know that when you were the Divine King of Heaven origin, you died in battle for the flowing sky world, Li Fengzi said. At that time, you also saved the world. But that was my 3rd incarnation, Jiang Chen said snappily. Each incarnation is different. I didn't think so much in this incarnation. The Divine King of Heaven origin is also one of your previous incarnations, right? Li Fengzi asked again. Jiang Chen was stunned. He didn't know where Li Fengzi learned about this matter. However, since the other party had asked, it meant that he knew about this matter. Jiang Chen also nodded and said, So what? At the mention of the profound sky supreme being, Jiang Chen thought of Mu Yud. He didn't know where that bastard Taoist was right now. His profound sky divine king's body was still in the hands of that bastard Taoist. In the profound sky divine king's life, according to the records, you also fought for the sake of the world and died in battle. Li Fengzi sighed. I have to say, you were a hero in all your lives. I really don't know. Jiang Chen smiled bitterly. I have lost the memories of my previous lives. It doesn't matter if you remember or not. You just need to understand one thing. Since you did this in your previous lives, you will do the same in this life, Li Fengzi said with certainty. This made Jiang Chen feel puzzled. Why did he have to do the same in this life when he had saved lives in his previous lives? Why? What world? What common people? When Jiang Chen was at his most difficult time, he didn't see many people in the world come to help him, nor did the common people show him a trace of pity. Now, he was asked to save the common people in the world? Ha! Not for others, for yourself, for the people around you, Li Fengzi said. If the 18 families rule the godless continent, will the people around you still have a place to stay? But I don't have that ability now, Jiang Chen said in a deep voice. If his strength allowed, Jiang Chen would naturally do it. But now, he was just a cultivator at Heaven's Blight. In the past, this level of cultivation was indeed enough to be looked at. But in this environment, what was a Heaven's Blight? Sometimes, it would be difficult to even protect himself. I don't want to say any more. I just want you to know that you don't have much time left, Li Fingzi said. Then, he waved his hand and said, maybe you should go to the third mountain. The third mountain? That's a forbidden area. Jiang Chen's expression changed slightly. Since ancient times, no one had been able to come out of the third mountain alive. Even Lin Langwetian was not sure if he was dead or alive. No one knew if Lin Langwetian could walk out of the third mountain alive. And most importantly, what was the point of going to the third mountain? There is a way to become a god on land in the third mountain, Li Fingzi said. If you don't die in there, you can become a god on land. At that time, so what if the 18 families are strong? So what if there are demigods? With a raise of your hand, all obstacles, all demonic barriers, will turn into ashes. However, entering the third mountain was gambling with one's life. For Jiang Chen, as long as he was given time, he would definitely be able to rise. But now, the only thing Jiang Chen lacked was time. The barren state has already fallen. If the 18 families make a move again, their next target will be the middle state, Li Fingzi said. When the middle state has also fallen, what sect on the godless continent will be able to stop the 18 families? You also know that the middle state dynasty can't make a move now. If the 18 families attack, the middle state dynasty will be giving up. When Jiang Chen heard this, he immediately fell silent. Yes, he didn't have much time left. When will the middle state dynasty go to the eternal fortress? Jiang Chen asked. There was a glimmer of light in the depths of his eyes. In the next few days, at most a month, Li Fingzi said. I'll go to the third mountain. Jiang Chen's eyes narrowed. But you have to promise me one thing. Before the middle state dynasty goes to the eternal fortress, even if you have to make an exception, you have to protect the entire sect. Okay. Li Fingzi nodded. I'll make an exception, but you have to think carefully. I don't need to think about it. I have no choice. Jiang Chen smiled bitterly and sighed. If I can come out of the third mountain alive, the 18 families and the demigods will all be pressed to the ground. If I can't come out, this life will come to an end. Although there are regrets and unwillingness in my heart, at least I've tried my best. Sigh, who isn't? Li Fingzi smiled bitterly. I haven't had enough of being the imperial ruler, and I have to go to the eternal fortress. My position as the imperial ruler is really torturous and unbearable. That's it then. At this moment, Jiang Chen didn't want to continue talking. After giving some instructions, he got up and left the middle state dynasty. Half a day later, in an extremely remote corner of the godless continent, Jiang Chen tore through the void and appeared. His aura was like a rainbow, and his eyes were fixed on a tall mountain in front of him. To be precise, it was a mountain range. There were a total of 9 mountains. 8 of them were outside, and 1 was in the middle, like stars surrounding the moon. The tall mountain in the middle was the legendary forbidden area, the third mountain. Chapter 602. Since ancient times, very few people have set foot in this place. There were no birds, beasts, or insects. There was only a patch of ancient trees. The qi of heaven and earth was extremely dense here. It turned into a fog that enveloped the entire mountain range. Especially on the third mountain, the qi of heaven and earth had turned into water. It was like a drizzle that watered the third mountain all year round. At this moment, Jiang Chen was standing outside the mountains. He turned around and looked in the direction of the barren state. A trace of worry flashed across his eyes. He didn't know if the Qianzuan sect could withstand it. He also didn't know if the Zhongzhou dynasty could protect the Qianzuan sect. If I can make it out alive, I will have the final say in this world. The worry in Jiang Chen's eyes gradually disappeared. It was replaced by determination. However, if he died on the third mountain, he wouldn't even be able to see the person he liked the most, the person closest to him. Time to go! After a dozen breaths, Jiang Chen calmed down. He stepped out and used the shrinking technique. In the blink of an eye, he stepped into the mountain range. Buzz! At this moment, there was a buzzing sound. A special order and law appeared on the third mountain. Jiang Chen felt as if a mountain had collapsed. An invisible gravitational force was exerted on him. Puff! Even though Jiang Chen's physical body was extremely strong, under this force of gravity, Jiang Chen couldn't help but tremble. A mouthful of blood and internal organs were spat out from his mouth. What the hell is this place? Jiang Chen was shocked. No wonder the third mountain was a forbidden area. The order and laws here alone weren't something that ordinary people could withstand. Jiang Chen stayed where he was and tried to adapt to the order and laws here. It wasn't until 3 days later that Jiang Chen finally got used to it. Slowly letting out a sigh of relief, Jiang Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Then, he raised his head and looked straight at the third mountain. However, before he could take a few steps, he saw a figure in front of him. That person's back was facing Jiang Chen. He was like a statue. In his hand was a black sickle that was dripping with blood. It was as if the blood on the sickle would never stop dripping. Who is it? Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes. The blood in his body surged as he formed 6 little fingers on his left hand and the 6 paths reincarnation fist sign on his right hand. The third mountain is a forbidden area. Trespassers will die. At this moment, the statue-like person turned around. He had no face, no facial features. On that bald face, there was only the word army. How do I enter the third mountain? Jiang Chen asked. Senior, who are you? I am a soldier from the third mountain. I am here to guard this place. The person said. If you can take 3 of my moves, you can continue. If you can't, this will be your burial ground. Oh? Only 3 moves? Jiang Chen whispered. Wasn't this too simple? However, a moment later, the man's body trembled, and his energy exploded out. Jiang Chen's face turned green. Demigod? Jiang Chen cried out in surprise. Withstanding 3 moves from a demigod? Wasn't this a joke? Not to mention 3 moves, he couldn't even take half a move. First move. Before Jiang Chen could speak, the scythe in the man's hand swept out. A sharp black crescent moon bombarded Jiang Chen's body. Pfft. In an instant, Jiang Chen coughed up blood and was cut in half at the waist. His upper body and lower body were separated, and his internal organs were shattered. Even his soul was severely injured, flickering like a candle flame. Not bad, I'll give you 10 breaths of time, the man said and did not continue to attack. Jiang Chen did not ask any more questions. He hurriedly burned his essence blood and the inextinguishable fire. In the shortest amount of time, he reconstructed his physical body. At the same time, the myriad change celestial lamp lit up, and a wisp of power like a spring breeze nurtured his injured soul. After 10 breaths, Jiang Chen recovered. However, before he could breathe a sigh of relief, the scythe in the man's hand slashed out again. This time, the cold light tore through the void. Like a black dragon, it fell from the top of Jiang Chen's head and swallowed Jiang Chen in one gulp. Slash! Jiang Chen roared and struck out with the myriad change celestial slash, directly shattering the cold light. However, Jiang Chen's physical body was already shattered, and his soul flickered unstably. He was on the verge of death. I'll give you 10 more breaths of time, the man whispered, and a blood-red light appeared on the scythe in his hand, blending with the darkness. It was as if hell appeared on the scythe. Jiang Chen was silent, and still did not say a word. He burned all the essence blood in his body, and the fire of the undying bird burned like a raging flame. His physical body was reconstructed, and his soul was nurtured. After 10 breaths of time, Jiang Chen burned all of his essence blood. The blood in his body was exhausted, but his injuries were healed. However, he had turned into a hunchbacked old man. He was past his prime and looked like a man who was about to die. If I can withstand this last attack, will I be able to enter the third mountain? Jiang Chen asked with a solemn look in his eyes. His pupils were murky. His blood had dried up, and even his lifespan had decreased. However, at this point, Jiang Chen didn't have a choice anymore. If he wanted to leave, the man before him would not let him. Last attack. The man did not answer Jiangchen. After 10 breaths of time, he said those words and slashed out with the scythe in his hand. Boom! At that moment, Jiangchen concealed his spirit and qi. The door of the Great Way opened in his body, and the qi of the Great Way exploded. This was the door of the Great Way that opened in his body after cultivating the incomplete heavenly manual. However, there was only a small crack in this door. Now, Jiangchen was going all out. He wanted to use this man's attack to completely open the door of the Great Way. Boom! In the next moment, the black and red light slashed at him. In an instant, Jiangchen's physical body was destroyed. However, his soul was protected by the ever-changing heavenly lamp. Although he was severely injured, he was not destroyed. At the same time, the door of the Great Way blocked Jiangchen's path like a boulder. The cold light slammed into the door of the Great Way. The sound of a bell being rung exploded and reverberated in all directions. Poof! Poof! At that moment, Jiangchen's soul spat out 3 mouthfuls of spiritual energy. His entire soul dimmed and was almost destroyed. However, at the same time, the door of the Great Way vibrated. Under the cold light, the door was half opened. Buzz! Instantly, the qi of the Great Way exploded from the door. An obscure force spread in all directions and supported Jiangchen's body. With the support of the Great Way and the care of the heavens, the enlightenment he gained was the same as when he ascended. In a short span of 3 breaths, Jiangchen's physical body recovered. His soul shone like the sun, and there was a circular spot of light floating above Jiangchen's soul. This was the seed formed by the power of the Great Way, the Tao seed. It's done! Jiangchen was excited. He had risked his life to counterattack. He did not expect to succeed. The incomplete heavenly manual used the incomplete body as a guide to refine the corner of the Great Way. And that corner was the Tao seed. Once the Tao seed was formed, it was as if one's body was merged with the Great Way. In the future, there would be no bottlenecks in cultivation. When cultivating, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Tao seed? The incomplete heavenly manual? The man was shocked. There was finally a slight fluctuation in his originally calm tone. Senior, do you know this cultivation technique? Jiangchen asked. A broken path. I did not expect that there would still be people who continue to walk on it. The man shook his head. Give up on this cultivation technique. So what if you have formed the Tao seed? The Great Way is ethereal. Although the Tao seed in your body is merged with the Great Way, it is not necessarily a good thing. The Great Way is not something that everyone can merge with, let alone be controlled. Chapter 603. What cultivators cultivated was the illusory Great Tao. However, the Great Way was illusory and all cultivators could only figure it out. How could they truly control the Great Way? It was possible to merge with the Great Way, but what would happen after merging? If one did not form the Great Way and could not control the Great Way, what was the use of merging with the Great Way? At most, one would have one more Taoist seed than an ordinary person. However, in Jiangchen's heart, with the Taoist seed, he would not have any bottlenecks in his future cultivation. He would be nourished by the Great Way at all times and his body would slowly improve. In the long run, he would be invincible. Senior, how did you know about the incomplete heavenly manual? Jiangchen asked. Not only did I know about it, but in the darkest and most prosperous era, almost everyone cultivated the incomplete heavenly manual, the faceless man said. However, this path was cut off. You can cultivate the incomplete heavenly manual to perfection, but the path after perfection is actually a dead end. The faceless man sighed. The faceless man seemed to have not spoken for a long time. After he finished speaking, he explained to Jiangchen why he could not cultivate the incomplete heavenly manual. It turned out that since ancient times, the saying, "Heaven is round and earth is round," had always existed. This was a word that people used to describe the Great Way. Because of this word, people in the later generations created the incomplete heavenly manual. Using one's body to guide the great way into one's body to repair one's incomplete body, this was the beginning of cultivation. It could be said that the incomplete heavenly manual was the first cultivation technique in the world. All the cultivation techniques in the later generations, no matter how high they were, originated from the incomplete heavenly manual. However, at the end of the incomplete heavenly manual, the sky was still the same, but the body was complete. The body was complete and no longer incomplete. It was like an iron wall. External factors, energy, and even the great way could not enter the body. As such, when the incomplete heavenly manual was cultivated to perfection, the cultivation had reached the end. However, in the later generations there were people who took that step. That person was unknown, but it was known that he created the deficient earth manual. The heaven is round and earth was finally comprehended into two cultivation techniques, the incomplete heavenly manual and the deficient earth manual. However, only the creator of the deficient earth manual knew how to cultivate it. It did not spread out in the world. Because of this, without the deficient earth manual, the incomplete heavenly manual was gradually abandoned. Until now, no one had practiced the incomplete heavenly manual. Perhaps in this world, only Jiangchen was still practicing the incomplete heavenly manual. Unless you can find the missing earth formula, otherwise the heavens and the earth will not match. Your path will eventually come to an end, the faceless man said. But the earth deficient technique has never been circulated, and no one has passed it down. Where am I going to find the earth deficient technique? Jiangchen smiled bitterly. He originally thought that after cultivating the incomplete heavenly manual, he had found a path to invincibility. Who would have thought that the end of this road was actually a dead end? Jiangchen's mood at the moment was very complicated and uncomfortable. After cultivating the incomplete heavenly manual, Jiangchen's combat strength was now very strong. He was almost invincible in the same realm. However, this was only temporary. By the time he cultivated the incomplete heavenly art to perfection, he would have reached the end of his cultivation path. At that time, could it be that he would have to watch those who came after him continuously surpass him, while he himself would stay at the same place? While you have not cultivated the incomplete heavenly manual to perfection now, you can destroy the incomplete heavenly manual yourself and choose a new cultivation method, the faceless man said. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will be too late. When Jiangchen heard that, he could not help but fall silent. Want him to change cultivation methods now? Was there enough time? Putting aside the fact that he had to choose a cultivation method that suited him, just based on the current time, Jiangchen was not allowed to do so. Senior, is there really no other way? Jiangchen asked. There is, the faceless man said. Create the earth deficient technique yourself. When these words came out, Jiangchen's face darkened. Creating a cultivation method was actually quite simple for Jiangchen. However, to create a cultivation method that could continue the path of the incomplete heavenly manual, similar to the legendary earth deficient technique, wasn't this too difficult? Is this the only way? Jiangchen asked. This is the only way. The faceless man nodded and said. Then, if the incomplete heavenly manual is cultivated to perfection, what level will my cultivation reach? Jiangchen asked. Divine King, the faceless man said. When Jiangchen heard that, he could not help but be stunned on the spot. What? Was it not enough to cultivate to the Divine King level? Could it be that in this world, there was really a realm that surpassed the Divine King level? However, Jiangchen had never heard of it before. There is no hurry. I am only at Heaven's Blight now. I can cultivate slowly. In the process of cultivation, I can also slowly create the so-called earth deficient technique, Jiangchen said. Naturally, he would not give up on cultivating the incomplete heavenly manual so easily. When the faceless man heard that, he shook his head. He did not have a face, so his expression could not be seen. However, when he shook his head, Jiangchen understood that perhaps the path he had chosen was really a dead end. There is no path in this world. The real path is created by walking it. Jiangchen looked serious. Maybe I won't be able to walk down that path, But I believe that as long as the time is right and the opportunity is right, I won't have to walk down that path. It will appear in front of me. Since ancient times, there have been many geniuses who are as confident as you. However, what happened in the end? The faceless man said softly. Forget it, forget it. I do not wish to interfere with the path you have chosen. After saying that, the faceless man pointed behind him and said, Since you have withstood 3 of my moves, you can continue to move forward. Can I go straight to the 3rd mountain? Jiang Chen asked. No. The faceless man shook his head and said, The 3rd mountain is not so easy to enter. 1 step at a time. If you can pass all the tests, you can ascend the 3rd mountain. What is there on the 3rd mountain? Jiang Chen asked curiously. There are things that the world cannot understand, the faceless man said. Then, he waved his hand and said, Go. Jiang Chen nodded. He cupped his hands at the faceless man to salute him. After expressing his gratitude, he started to walk away. However, when he was less than 100 meters away, Jiang Chen's body began to tremble. It was as if his soul was about to leave his body. It was as if some kind of force was trying to take away his soul. What the hell? What is this place? Jiang Chen was shocked. He quickly retreated until he was next to the faceless man. Then, the force disappeared. You can't pass, right? The faceless man seemed to have predicted this outcome. He said with a mocking tone, You are lucky that you did not die. Now you can continue to move forward or leave alive. Then, the faceless man pointed in front of him. He waved his hand and the soil in front of him exploded. Corpses and skeletons appeared. Since ancient times, most of the people who entered the 3rd mountain died by my hands, the faceless man said. Now that you have withstood 3 of my moves, you can choose to leave the 3rd mountain alive. Chapter 604. Senior, is there something strange ahead? Why do I feel like my soul is being sucked away? Jiang Chen asked. When he heard that, the faceless man understood that Jiang Chen would not retreat. There's a soul assimilation formation ahead. Those with weak willpower and soul power will not be able to pass through it, the faceless man said. Although you're strong, there's no way you can pass through the soul assimilation formation with your soul power. Soul assimilation formation? Jiang Chen muttered softly and a smile appeared on his lips. What is this lad smiling about? The faceless man thought to himself as an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Naturally, Jiang Chen had heard of the soul assimilation formation and knew how to dispel it. However, the soul assimilation formation that Jiang Chen knew of could only be considered as a minor one compared to the formation ahead. After all, this was the territory of the 3rd mountain and the formations here were not something that could be compared to the current world's formations. However, be it the soul assimilation formation or the minor one, they were all similar. That also meant that Jiang Chen could dispel the soul assimilation formation here as long as he spent a little more time. Here. Then here. And here. I want some here too. Here. No. Here. Following that, Jiang Chen paced around the soul assimilation formation continuously. Wherever he passed, he would stop and frown while muttering to himself. At the same time, his hands were forming hand seals continuously, and rare treasures fell to form formation stones. At the side, the faceless man clenched his fists tightly and his entire body trembled. He was not afraid, he was infuriated. If he had a face, one would be able to see how terrible his expression was. Lad! This is the 3rd mountain. What are you trying to do? The faceless man hollered. I took 3 of your moves. You can't attack me anymore, right? Jiang Chen probed, feeling a little guilty. Jiang Chen knew very well that the faceless man did not use his full strength in the previous 3 moves. However, Jiang Chen was deeply afraid of angering the faceless man. At that time, the demigod would be able to deal with Jiang Chen in half a move. According to the rules, I can't attack you anymore, the faceless man said. It was precisely because of this that the faceless man was angry. If he had known that Jiangchen would be a disaster, he would have made an exception with those 3 moves and used all his strength to kill Jiangchen. Draw the yin and yang firewood, activate the 8 wastelands furnace, ignite the power of the 4 symbols, and break the 9 palaces. A dozen breaths later, Jiangchen formed a seal with his hands and muttered to himself. Then, a screen of light rose. Vaguely, the silhouettes of the 4 mythical beasts could be seen. There was also a furnace that was burning with yin and yang qi. 1. After a few more breaths of time, a rumbling sound came from the front, and then the ground started to tremble. It's broken! Jiangchen was excited. He pointed ahead and asked, Can I go in now? When the faceless man heard this, he was so angry that he didn't want to speak. Enter. How could I stop you? Senior, I'm leaving, Jiangchen said with a smile. He continued to walk forward. However, after he had advanced 1,000 meters and was only 100 meters away from the 3rd mountain, his entire body turned cold. He had a premonition of great danger. Without any hesitation, Jiangchen used shrinking earth into an inch in succession, and the energy in his body burned. He moved horizontally and retreated continuously. Finally, he returned to the faceless man's side. Senior, that place is very strange, Jiangchen said weakly. I feel a great sense of crisis. That place can be considered the foot of the 3rd mountain. There are many layers of restrictions there, said the faceless man. The restrictions there are not something you can break. Only by finding the life gate can you enter the 3rd mountain. Otherwise, you'll have to wait to be trapped in the restriction and be locked in there forever. As soon as these words came out, Jiangchen's expression immediately became strange. Big brother, I'm afraid you don't know the name of Jianzuan's sex leader, right? Venerate, venerate, venerate all professions. Formations, restrictions, barriers, as long as it existed in this world, there was nothing Jiangchen did not know. Thank you for your guidance, senior, Jiangchen said with a smile. He was very polite to the faceless man. He clasped his hands and thanked him. At this moment, the faceless man's hair danced wildly, and the sickle in his hand vibrated. He knew what Jiangchen was going to do. He wanted nothing more than to slash with his sickle. Senior, let me ask you another question. Before me, did someone called Lin Lang Wentian come in? Did he go up the mountain? Jiangchen asked. There was a person who called himself the Pavilion Master of the Martial Pavilion. He was very strong and very intelligent, the faceless man said. He has been in the 3rd mountain for a long time. Perhaps he had a fortuitous encounter. Is he really still alive? Jiangchen was shocked. If he encountered Lin Lang Wentian after going up the 3rd mountain, then, was he going to be beaten to death? However, since he had already come this far, Jiangchen had no other choice. He could only move forward. The legendary 3rd mountain, I must go up and take a look, Jiangchen said softly. He rose to his feet. However, as soon as Jiangchen took his first step, the faceless man stopped him and said with a strange voice, I'll send you to the 3rd mountain directly. Why? I haven't cracked the forbidding auras yet. Jiangchen was startled. Why do you care? The faceless man said angrily. However, the faceless man was cursing Jiangchen in his heart. If you weren't thinking of cracking the forbidding auras, why would I send you up directly? I was worried that you would destroy the forbidding auras. The faceless man was already infuriated after Qin Haodong destroyed the soul-absorbing formation. If he allowed Qin Haodong to destroy the forbidding auras, would the 3rd mountain still be a threat? At that time, if his master was born and saw that his sect had been defiled, as a servant, he would probably be reduced to ashes on the spot. I'm sorry about that. Jiangchen rubbed his hands and said, Senior, you don't have to break the rules here for me. Don't worry, I can go up myself. Get out of my way! The faceless man couldn't take it anymore. He kicked Jiangchen in the waist. The power of a demigod enveloped him and kicked Jiangchen to the top of the 3rd mountain. What a scourge! You're even more of a scourge than that damned Taoist priest, the faceless man muttered. However, he didn't expect a young Taoist priest to sneak into the 3rd mountain right after he said that. The faceless man immediately noticed the young Taoist, and his bald face began to contort. Aya! What a coincidence! We meet again, senior! The young Taoist priest smiled and rubbed his hands. I'm here too, you want to go up? I'll send you! The faceless man's chest heaved. He was really going to explode. He was still muttering about that damn Taoist priest. He didn't expect him to really come. Do you think this is your own King home? Chapter 605. The faceless man was about to go crazy. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have any facial features, one could see his twisted expression. This was too infuriating. He was the guardian general of the third mountain, but he was infuriated by two mortals. One of them had broken the soul-absorbing array, and now they wanted to break the restrictive spells. Were they here to demolish the place? The other one was even more despicable. He had been here before and had even used the third mountain as a storehouse to store several items. Two bastards! The faceless man cursed in his heart. If these two were together, they would definitely turn the clear water into a quagmire. What the faceless man didn't know was that when the young Taoist was sent to the top of the third mountain, Jiangchen was dumbfounded. At the same time, the young Taoist was also dumbfounded. Jiangchen? Muyude? The two of them stared at each other. Neither of them had expected to meet the other here. What are you doing here? Jiangchen asked. He had just arrived, and Muyude was right behind him. This made Jiangchen seriously suspect that Muyude was following him. I'm here to get something, Muyude said. What about you? I'm here to train, Jiangchen said. You know the current situation. If I don't improve my cultivation, I'll probably die in this chaotic world. I think so too, Muyude said seriously. Then, he walked to Jiangchen's side and grabbed his hand. He said sincerely, Do you know why I risked my life to come here? You're not here for me, are you? Jiangchen frowned. He felt that Muyude was not trustworthy. Of course. Muyude nodded and said seriously, I'm here to get your physical body. Jiangchen was dumbfounded. He didn't know what to do until he started cursing. What a bastard you are! You hid my profound sky divine king's body here. This is the safest place in the world, Muyude said. However, Jiangchen didn't understand what Muyude meant. Entering the third mountain was extremely dangerous. The guardian of the third mountain was a demigod, not to mention other things. They had to withstand 3 attacks from a demigod before they could move on. How could an ordinary person survive such a dangerous situation? So, if Muyude hid his body here, and if Muyude couldn't come back in the future, wouldn't Jiangchen's mysterious Sky Divine King's body be buried here forever? F***CKU. Are you trying to kill me? Jiangchen was annoyed. Aya, aren't we here now? Muyude was also feeling guilty. Truth be told, he was worried about whether or not he would be able to enter the third mountain. He diz to the third mountain's range. Muyu is to have a look? St to the end? T. He dizzes. Jiangchen noticed it immediately. He straightened Muyude's head and made him look at him. Then, he stared into Muyude's eyes and asked, What's wrong? Don't tell me you can't take it out. Impossible. Muyude shook his head. He felt even more guilty. He coughed a few times and said weakly, It's just that the hiding place is a little hidden. I need some time. Where did you hide it? Jiangchen asked. The peak of the third mountain wasn't big. It was about the size of a football field. There was also a small flat area here. Jiangchen and Muyude were on the flat area. There were grass, trees, rocks, and a stone tablet. Behind the stone tablet was a cave. Other than that, there was nothing else. Where else can we hide things here other than that cave? Muyude said angrily. However, when Jiangchen looked at the cave, he saw a restrictive spell glowing. There was also a peerless killing spell floating there. It was impossible for Jiangchen to crack such tactical formations and restraining orders with his current strength. You can go in? Jiang Chen asked. Not yet. Mu Yude was honest now. Since he had already said it, he didn't care. Not yet? Then when can you go in? Jiang Chen was anxious. If you go in after 300 to 500 years, why would I need the body of the mysterious Sky Supreme Being? By then, either Jiang Chen was dead, or he had already become a Supreme Being. Every full moon, there will be a loophole in the restrictive spell. I can take the opportunity to go in and take your body out, Mu Yude said. Mu Yude touched his nose and looked at the sky. He mumbled. Chang'an's body is also in there. If Nian Chang'e hears this, he will beat you to death. Jiang Chen's face darkened. He and Nian Chang'e were really in the same boat. Their bodies were not only stolen by the same person, but they were also placed in the same place. Then hurry up. I'm going to take a look around here, Jiang Chen said in a low voice. There didn't seem to be anything special on the peak of the third mountain. Jiang Chen didn't see Lin Lang Wentian either. However, everyone knew that Lin Lang Wentian was on the third mountain. So, where was he now? 3,000 dreams? At this moment, Jiang Chen walked up to the stele in front of the cave. He saw the 4 ancient words carved on the stele. Mu Yude walked over and explained. Don't touch this stone tablet. What's wrong? Jiang Chen asked. There is a special small world inside the stone tablet. Once you touch it, you will be pulled into the small world. In that small world, you will be in a daze as if you are dreaming. If you don't wake up from the dream, you will be trapped until you die, Mu Yude said in a low voice. You've been in there before? Jiang Chen was surprised. Mu Yude was quite familiar with the third mountain. No, I've never been in there before. Mu Yude shook his head and rolled his eyes. He pointed at the few lines of words below the stone tablet and said, Are you blind? Isn't it written here? Air. Jiang Chen looked embarrassed. After looking at the few lines of words carefully, a trace of excitement flashed across his eyes. This was because the small world within the stone tablet could also be considered as a training ground. Sleeping in that small world for a day was equivalent to cultivating in the outside world for a year. If one slept in there for 100 years, how many years would it be equivalent to cultivating in the outside world? Thinking about it this way, going in and sleeping for a night was simply a great opportunity. A great opportunity! However, the stone tablet clearly stated that if one didn't wake up, they would be trapped in the small world forever until their lifespan ran out and they died. Moreover, there was a price to pay for entering the small world. Sleeping in there for a day would burn 10 years of one's lifespan. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.